Hello there, my little chickadees. Welcome to episode 147 of the Fluffenhammer. You might be thinking, there's no cold open. What is this madness? Right. So, for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be dropping the Patreon Battle Mallet episodes in place of normal Fluffenhammer episodes. For a very good reason. That reason being that I managed to build up a fairly decent backlog that was going to have us coming out every 2 weeks for the foreseeable, with plenty of breathing space to get everything done, and we were going to be great. Then my computer died, taking all those episodes with it. So I've managed to save one or two, I think two at this point, but unfortunately, yeah, the others are gone. Just gone. Horrible moment. But it's just one of those things that happens, unfortunately. Should have backed him up to the cloud. I'm an idiot. Yeah. I'm too set in my ways. That's the problem. I am far too set in my ways. So, what I've decided to do is I'm going to take all the Battle Mallet episodes and I'm going to drop them in weekly for the next couple of weeks, just so we've kind of got some breathing space. I feel weird about having them come out every fortnight. I think that seems like a bit much. To just expect you guys to have the old Patreon episodes just coming out every fortnight. When we get a new episode, I'll add it into the list, and it just means we've got a bit of breathing space and we don't have a huge amount of time between episodes like we have done, unfortunately. I hope you enjoyed the Peter Figures conversation. He's an interesting guy who does some really cool stuff. One of my favourite episodes that we've done, to be honest. Alongside that, we've also got the Fluff and Busters coming out once a month, where we, David and Mr. White, look at various films that are vaguely hobby-related. And over on Patreon, we do have the Deeper Dives, where a group of people discuss a huge article of some description from the pages of White Dwarf. So there's plenty of stuff coming out. Just too much stuff, maybe. Too much stuff. Come and join us on Patreon. We do a lot of stuff. It's fun. It's good fun. Go on, please. With no further ado, then, I shall let you then enjoy this roundtable conversation about The End and the Death, Volume 1. Bye-bye.
It was the year of fire, the year of destruction, the year we took what was ours. It was a year of rebirth, a year of great bloodletting, a year of pain, and the year it was a new age. It was the end of history. Everything changed. Welcome to Battle Mallet. Roll the music.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I am Gruffy, I am Adam. With me today are two people I have caught from the great abyss to sit with me and discuss something, for you have entered Battle Mallet. I will explain the basic idea of Battle Mallet very shortly, but by doing so, I've managed to ruin my own theatrical momentum.
Does it have anything to do with Timmy Mallet or Mallet's Mallet or anything like that?
Well, you know, I actually did consider at one point calling it Mallet, which, if you remember...
Yes! Yes, the Chaos God, yes.
Yeah, going way back.
Way back to the early Fluffenhammer.
Yeah.
Prehistoric Fluffenhammer.
Yeah, year one, we often brought up Mallet, the fifth Chaos God.
Yeah, that's proper sort of Stone Age Fluffenhammer, isn't it?
Yeah, we still had a quiz at the end of the show at that point.
Yeah, wow, we did, didn't we? Jesus.
Yeah, I'd just make a quiz and try to fuck with yous with it. As I said, I'm Adam. With me, of course, is my long-term suffering Fluffenhammer partner, George.
Hello there, long-suffering and loving it, in classic Clive Barkerian style.
Absolutely, I am the puzzle box and...
the lament configuration.
Do you want power or resurrection? Which do you want? God. Oh man, I really want to see the Hellraiser films redone, but with a slightly Cockney working class Cenobites.
Like Cenobites, yeah. Right,
All right, there, you little tinker. What you gonna do? Are you gonna pick some resurrection or some power? Wait.
Cenobite Cockney rhyming slang. What would that be like? Bloody hell.
Oh my word.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try, quite frankly.
Would you like some pins?
That's not Cockney. That's kind of like Australian.
All right, there, mate. You've entered the Australian Cenobites. No, you haven't entered the Australian Cenobites.
They'd like that.
Back up. No, actually, that doesn't
like
help
that.
either.
No, it doesn't, does it? Especially considering you're talking about bears with ball gags before we came on.
Absolutely.
You know.
My reading of Goldilocks is not the same as everyone else's.
No, clearly.
And of course, we have Big Swingin' D, long-term sufferer of the Fluffenhammer.
Can I go back to the void yet? It was peaceful there.
Yeah, it's probably a bit more clement there, wasn't it, to be honest?
You can go back to the void when you've had your pudding.
Okay. Again, I'm getting Slaneshi vibes, and it's, you know.
Both unsettling and relaxing.
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah, calling it Rattlsack. No.
No. You were trying to come up with a spoonerism.
I did, and then I realised what I was about to say was rattlesexing, and just went.
Yeah, that does
dear.
sound like a Slaneshi thing. Definitely, that sounds like the name of a Slaneshi demon. Actually,
I was more thinking it's going to be the name of my my next jazz band. It's
it could be both.
yeah,
Could be both. You know.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Smooth Hour with rattlesexing.
That sounds like the kind of name you'd generate from the ROC demon name generators.
Fulgrim's message board name.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not like it'd be Bishy Snake Boy 01 or something, wouldn't it? You know.
Big Dick Snake Man.
When
Anyhow,
are we gonna get it? I mean, before you stop, when are we going to get him? Come on.
Well, if you
Come
don't
on.
mind- if you're sick of waiting for GW, here's a hint. Merce Miniatures, one of my favourite miniatures makers, have a line called Darklands.
Yeah.
And in it, they've got a faction that's all kind of half human, half snake, multi-armed weirdos.
Oh, so like Fulgrim then?
Yeah. The leader of which has 4 arms, 4 swords, and is a very pretty boy. No wings, but that's an easy fix.
Oh, that's an easy fix. Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. He's currently 20 quid because they're doing a half-price Nobles
God. Can you imagine how much Fulgrim is going to be when he eventually hits? He's going to be a lot of money.
He's going to be a very big boy.
He's going to be an expensive boy, he is.
imagine if you will.
I was going to say then, it's okay, I'm used to expensive boys. I'm not going to say that because I'm above that. Totally above it.
There's a way of turning that round, actually, to make sense. You have been to TFN multiple times.
I
you have spent
indeed.
time in the Transformers Nation buy and sell room, and you do own a Scorponok. So you are indeed used to expensive boys.
I'm used to the expensive boys, yes.
Yes, Scorponok is an expensive boy. Moving the hell on quickly.
Swiftly.
So tonight we're going to be talking about the end and the death part 1. I'm doing this right now. I'm just going to put this right now in stone. It's recorded. It is currently 2046 on the 16th of May 2023. I'm placing a bet that at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning on the 17th of the 5th 2023, End in the Death Part 2 gets announced because we have finally got around to doing this episode.
Yeah, it's probably true.
I am going to place that right there. And if it doesn't, I'm still going to leave it in because I bet you, because I've said it, it's going to wait till the day after. I fucking bet you. Right.
You know what? I mean, like, we've got so much that we really want to do that we never have. Like the first Heretic, for example. We really want to do that, don't we? But we just haven't got around to it. When we get to do it, you know that Aaron Dembski-Bowden is going to announce his new Word Bearers 40k trilogy, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm fairly sure that one of the reasons we haven't done various things over the years is because the wizards at GW put out these waves to try and stop you from doing it in order for them to get stuff, all the ducks in a row and get stuff released just in time, just to piss me off.
It is a sort of chicken and egg thing, isn't it? It does feel like whenever we talk about anything on this show, particularly things that you want to happen, Adam, they happen. Like a few, or at least a week after.
Yeah,
It's really strange. It's
It is.
uncanny, actually.
I actually wrote about that for this week's Sunday Musings.
Yeah, it is worth. It's that consistent that it's actually worth writing about, right?
Absolutely. I had to make a little disclaimer though that I don't actually think that this is anything other than coincidence.
No.
I'm not suffering from psychosis.
But that said, it is uncanny, isn't it? It's very strange.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's like armies will happen once I've finished making the army.
Yeah, it's the oddest thing, isn't it? Things like Grots and Beastmen in 40k, Votan. You know, it's really weird.
And so I did my Ragnar Blackmane conversion, and a matter of days later, they announced Primaris version of him.
Yeah, of course.
I'd only been waiting 20 years for it.
It's been a long time. Yeah, he's a long-suffering mini, weren't he? Eh? He really was.
And then they go, oh, by the way, ta-da! It's like,
yeah,
bastards.
Here's the bigger version that cut off Garskull Thracker's head. He got better, but you know.
I still don't know how I feel about Ragnar Blackmane being Garskull's nemesis now.
Yeah,
it goes back to their original battle report, which is something, but it don't feel right.
There's that. I mean, it's for the vast majority of time we've been in the hobby, it's always been Yarrick, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And Garthkull. So it's. I mean, I can understand why they did it because it doesn't really make sense anymore, does it? You know, those two going toe to toe. I mean, in his current form, I mean, Garskull would just step on him.
Yeah.
That'd be it, wouldn't it? You know.
Well, it's why I'm fairly sure that when this new Imperial Guard Codex comes out for 10th, one of the things you'll do is Yarrick the Dreadnought, and it's just going to be, it's going to be slightly bigger than Garskull, and it's just going to be there to annoy him. It's just
I'm all for that kind of thing. Like maybe they could bring back like they've done with Sarka Creed, a descendant of.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be awesome. Yarrick's grandson or something who's like
granddaughter, wouldn't that be ace? Bloody hell, I'd love to see that. Yarrick's granddaughter.
Yeah, it's kind of cool how they've been positioning the timeline of 40 Years Millennium, because they've pretty much made the Sabbath World Crusades a modern component.
Yes.
As well, with Yarrick being known to Gaunt and Gaunt being a major figure in that, and with the wibbly wobbly timey-wiminess of everything. I mean, I have a suspicion of where Abnett's various 40k projects are going. Because have you guys read Penitent or the latest?
Not yet.
I haven't. No. Not yet, unfortunately.
Okay, not so much for Gaunt's Ghost, but certainly in Penitent, which is there's one more Beckwin book to go in his Inquisition series, Pandemonium. But there's stuff that he mentions quite extensively in Penitent that he's come back to in The End of the Death Part 1.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
That's interesting. I mean, this is something they seem to allow Abnett to do, isn't it? You know, they give him a lot of free rein to muck about with the universe.
Well, the last page of Penitent, I've reread it so many times because it's basically trying to identify. The whole book's basically decoding a bit of data, and it turns out at the end it's a name.
Oh, interesting.
But the name is millions of words long.
Oh, how fascinating.
Would you like to be spoiled as to what the name is?
Yeah, go on. Go for it. I'm okay. You okay, Adam?
I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
That, which is the name they've deciphered, is the name of the King in Yellow. That's been the overarching presence of the Beckwin book so far.
Yeah,
and someone that Eisenhorn and Ravner have both been they've been crossing over with their plans
Uh-huh.
for 6, 7 books before this.
So it feels like he's got a plan, right? There's some vast story being told here. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lovecraftian vibes are obvious,
Which kind of ties into, well, Valdor's journey in End of the Death, funny enough.
Absolutely it does. Absolutely it does.
We get to see Valdor using his spear, which could be, I mean, it's an ambiguous bit of kit, that, isn't it? I mean, okay, it has a very particular function, but considering where he's using it for the most part in the End and the Death, it may not be the best idea. No.
Chaos does have this habit of corrupting, doesn't it? Anything it touches.
Yeah.
You don't want to be absorbing information about chaos. That's not a good idea.
What are you talking about? That's how Jacques Draco found out everything he needed to know, and as we all know, Jacques Draco was a hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I've got a question for you both.
Of course.
Okay.
So the End and the Death is the end, as we all can tell, of the Horus Heresy series, which has been going for the last 15 years now.
Yes.
Oh my God, I can still remember the day I bought Horus Rising and False Gods and sat down and read them. I can still remember it.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely... What's even more bizarre is that, as we've discovered this week, George, the Horus Heresy itself only takes place over about 7 years.
Yeah, it's not massively long.
No, a decade at most. Which means, for all intents and purposes, the books have been coming out for twice the amount of time that the Horus Heresy took place.
See, I think that's the MASH effect, but as Chris pointed out in chat, he calls it more of a commando effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Commando's been running for 10 times the length of conflict it's based around.
Yep.
Yes, I mean, you also have to take into account like the innate qualities of the universe. I mean, this is something the End and the Death comments upon. Of course, I love that thing in the End and the Death where he's concentrating on the metaphysics of what's happening, and time is breaking down.
Yeah,
around
the soul's just sinking into the warp slowly.
Awesome. The notion,
a bonkers idea as well.
And it makes this conflict even more profound than it ever was before, because that wasn't happening in the original telling of the story. The demons were just sort of like manifesting on Terra. Now it's a focal point where the warp is literally subsuming reality, and that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and it's kind of fascinating to me that it's not just that it's subsuming reality, but that the Imperial Defenders are actually finding ways to use it to their advantage.
Use it, right? Like the time distorting effects and the distance distorting effects.
If time's running longer, let's use it. Let's make every bullet and every life count.
Right.
Yeah.
If space is starting to collapse in on itself and you can walk from one point and then suddenly appear somewhere else, miles away.
Yeah.
Let's use it. It's clearly something's guiding us. Let's work with it. And it's just like, oh, this is very interesting.
This is very cool.
This is combat at a whole nother level.
Yeah, and I love the way he mixes that with his historical allusions as well, because like a lot of this book is really solid, isn't it? It's very down and dirty. It is almost like it's written almost like a fictionalized historical war, basically.
I mean, so much of it is snapshots of individual defenders.
That's it.
Normally at the end of their life, frankly.
Yeah.
A lot of them we don't get much part
in terrible conditions. I mean, one of the things the book really emphasizes is just how down and dirty this war has got, where nobody knows what they're fighting for anymore on either side. Everybody is starving, dirty, diseased. There's nothing they can do.
One of the bits from, I think it was first described this way back in Codex Imperialis from the second edition box, was that the fighting became street to street, and even the gardens of the Imperial Palace, soldiers would be shot as they were just running to a pond to take a sip of water.
Yeah.
And deadly firefights. And it's just like, that's what this is. This is everyone at their last. The defenders have got nothing left to give, but, well, they found something.
Yeah.
And for all 40K's dystopian as hell, that's actually, it's wonderful to read, if that makes sense.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, to see a lot of characters who we've been following now. Some we've barely followed outside of Siege of Terror. They've appeared in this series, and that's it.
Yeah.
Others we've been following for most of the course of the Heresy.
Absolutely, some of them from the very beginning. You know, they were characters in the very first book.
Yeah, I mean Euphrates Keeler.
Euphrates Keeler, yeah, absolutely.
And especially because her journey, this is really her last appearance prior to this, chronologically, would have been in the Garrow.
Yeah, which was ages ago.
God.
And that is a hell of a novella in its own right for what it does with her.
Yeah.
So at this point where she's resigned to her sainthood.
Yeah, she's one of the more fascinating characters actually, because she is effectively a living saint of the Emperor, isn't she? She's the beginning of the ecclesiarchy. That's another thing that's being done with this series. They're setting up everything that will become the institutions of the Imperium. So you can see the sort of the proto Grey Knights here. You can see the proto ecclesiarchy and so on and so forth. She's the original saint of the Emperor, isn't she? But the way she regards it is fascinating.
Yeah, because originally she was quite, I don't want to say taken, but when she first began manifesting these abilities back in the initial trilogy that kicked things off, she was very much in awe of what she could do.
Yeah.
And now she's very much over it.
Yeah, very over it.
Very much so.
Very, very over it. Yeah. Well, she's seen a lot, hasn't she, Tracy?
Absolutely.
She's been across the galaxy and she's seen the darkest stuff happen. She was present, I believe, on the Vengeful Spirit when when the Sons of Horus bring Horus back from Davin, and the remembrances are all cluttering around them, and they end up like bludgeoning them to death. She saw that.
Yeah.
So she was there at the very beginning of the descent, into disgrace. It's kind of cool.
All right, what we're going to do is we're going to pick the book apart piece by piece by bringing things that we want to talk about out, instead of trying to go through the thing from A to B.
That because won't work. No, it needs to be thematic. It needs to be thematic.
Because if we try to just go through the entirety of the book as is, we will have the longest podcast we've ever done, and we wanted a 3.5-hour show. I'm not in for doing that tonight. But I really like to know, in the run-up to this book, not including the Siege of Terror, because I've got a second follow-up question.
Okay.
Spoilers. What's been the standout parts of the Horus Heresy as a series for you guys so far?
Oh, interesting. It's been the stuff really that's inverted the background a little bit. Stuff like the first Heretic, which, and Aurelian and Betrayer. So, but effectively the Word Bearers trilogy, which takes the essence of the Word Bearers as they appear in like the Codex background, which is always from a sort of like imperial slant, isn't it? It's always from that perspective, where they're fanatics and zealots and monsters and lunatics, and actually transforms them. It alters them a little bit, whereby they're actually considered metaphysicians, and they actually are looking for the truth of this universe, and more than that, they find it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They find it, because whatever else you want to say about chaos, it is a true metaphysics of this universe. Those gods exist, and they're real, and they affect reality. And I love that. Lorgar was a complete surprise to me in this series. Lorgar, who is not a frothing fanatic or lunatic at all.
No, he's actually quite a level-headed character who just takes a couple of steps in the wrong path. Well,
or the right path, depending on how you look at it, because he gets what he wants. Lorgar is absolutely justified by the end of the heresy, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely he is. Everything.
It's an interesting thing, and I love the way Aaron Dembski Bowden teases that out of the character, where he will not go down the easy route of just making him like frothing and blind and a lunatic. He is considered, and he is phenomenally intelligent. I would say probably like almost on Magnus's level in terms of his intelligence, and is one of the more considered Primarchs. He is willing to sit back and say, "I will take the universe as it comes."
He just has the two worst advisors in the universe.
In the universe, although by the time of Betrayer, he's transcended them. He makes that very clear. He is far more knowledgeable about the nature of chaos and the warp by that point than they are, and he's turned the tables on them. He's kind of playing them by that point.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, just to give people an idea how much I dislike Craig, I would much rather be in a room with Erebus than Craig.
Yeah. But for me, it's been stuff like that. It's been stuff that's revealed details that haven't been there before, or teased out, re-emphasized elements that were diminished before. So things like the Unremembered Empire, which was not part of the original fluff at all, but makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense,
Especially
I really like that.
with what we've gotten of Gilliman's character in these books, because so much of what they did, starting in Betrayal at Kelf.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Betrayal at Kelf?
It was, I think. Yes, that's the beginning of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is where we first got a real flavour for the Ultramarines' character in the horror setting.
Yes.
And Gilliman in particular.
Well, Gilliman's interesting because he is one of the very few loyalist Primarchs who actually comes off well in the Horus Heresy.
Yeah.
Everything he does makes sense. It's considered. It is not born out of spite or out of bitterness or out of competition with his brothers or anything like that. Everything he does makes perfect sense, and he is certainly one of the more considered of the Imperial Primarchs.
Well, I mean, I have certain biases because of my favorite faction, but Russ, I think he starts off. Prospero breaks him as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The rest of Heresy is basically him reckoning with that,
almost atoning. There's almost like after Prospero burns, there's a quality to him that he's almost on like a death quest.
Absolutely. I mean, he effectively uses a lot of the more bloodthirsty elements of the wolves. He uses them as a sacrifice to save the rest of the Legion from the Alpha Legion.
From the Alpha Legion, yeah.
And then his journey later on, where he does eventually face Horus with his spear, and that's another fascinating thing. Him and that bloody spear, which is great. But the whole thing where his entire journey across the Heresy is one of atonement and altering the Legion's character. Because looking at the wolves as they are as the route in the Horus Heresy compared to what we've known about in the fluff in the 41st millennium, where they're this beloved chapter of defenders of the people.
They're egalitarian in the 41st millennium, aren't they? They actually sometimes stand up against the wider Imperium. They're at odds with like the Inquisition a lot of the time.
They're one of the few chapters that truly embraces their separation from the Imperium as the fact that they are a separate entity from the Imperium itself. Their only real command is from the Emperor.
Yeah.
Which a lot of chapters don't really get into. And it's fascinating to see how they get there from where we meet them in the Heresy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because, of course, they were slightly rejigged in the Heresy to be the Emperor's executioners, of course. That wasn't really part of their character before this point. It's just something, but it was there. Yeah. Because they were, obviously in the original background, they were used to devastate Prospero, which makes sense. But it was never really emphasized that this is what they do. This is actually their function, The Alpha Legion you brought up, they're another really great example. One of the more, before the Horus Heresy, easily one of the least popular Chaos Legions, because there was not much to them. They were just like the guerrilla warfare fighters. That's what they did. They were the saboteurs. That's what they used to do. They were the saboteurs in blue armor with the Hydra logo. That was it. Legion comes along and completely transforms them.
Yep. And you know what's fascinating? So much of what we discussed Unremembered Empire, Burning of Prospero, Legion. It's that bloody Abnett man again.
It's Abnett, It's Abnett
Every
doing that stuff. like I said, he seems to have a real license with Games Workshop. They seem to allow him to come in and change things, which is good, by the way, because the changes that he introduces are generally pretty damn awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things I find absolutely fascinating about how the Horus Heresy has come along is how much they took from that original 2 to 3 page Will King writing that came in Adeptus Titanicus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can see how they've expanded everything out.
Isn't
And
it interesting? It's
it's
like they've written
amazing.
backwards from it, right?
Yeah.
They've taken details that are only all they are minor plot details and written them backwards. So there's going to be a character who is sacrificed at the end of this story. The Space Marine who breaks in on the fight between the Emperor and Horus.
Yeah.
It's Loken. It's going to be fucking Loken, isn't it?
It has to be at this point.
At this
everyone
point,
expects it to be Ollie Pierce.
right, it's gonna
Yeah.
be fucking Loken. You just know it is, right?
Which, if you remember, originally, before they turned it into the Unnamed Guardsman, it was a unnamed guy in a Terminator armor.
That's right.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
that's right. Yeah.
And that's my guess, is you're going to see Loken turn up and just get absolutely smooshed.
Just murdered
Yeah.
by Horus, yeah. Which would make sense. It would make sense for his character to be that martyr. Would make perfect sense, given his origins, given who he is, for Horus to murder one of his own most beloved sons. Let's not, he was part of the Mournival.
Yep.
One of the highest of the Legion, one of the most
last
elite.
member that Horus appointed before he fell.
Yeah, right.
So the last one that he had, it was clear of mind when he selected him.
Yeah, thematically, it would just draw everything together. It would make, and of course, given we're jumping forward a bit, but given the ending of the end and the death, what does Abnet do? Well, he tries to get him aboard the Vengeful Spirit, doesn't he? So it's like,
I was punching the air when that moment happened.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that in a minute.
What I like about it is the fact that Abnet doesn't try to play it coy. He kind of he knows that people who know the story know where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. He's been playing for the fans for the last 13 years of this stuff. He knows. I don't want to say that they knew where they were going, because I don't think anyone knew the Horus Heresy would blow up like it did.
No.
But I'm sure he must have had a book of notes of where he wanted to take things.
I think
He's
so.
just been slowly sketching it and offering a little... And we know it's been a very collaborative process with the authors of Doom the Heresy.
Yeah.
A lot of them were going, here's this character, can you get him to here for us? And can you try this idea? This will pay off, trust me. And it's... we've all read a lot of tie-in fiction over the years.
Oh my goodness.
For Horus Heresy, it's had its downs, but it's had more ups.
I would say so. It's been, on the whole, a very well-written series of not just pulp science fiction, although there's plenty of that going on, and it's really good pulp science fiction, by the way, for the most part. But there are stories in it that I would say are genuinely good science fiction, like genuinely good metaphysical science fiction. Aurelian, I would hold up against many sort of what people would consider to be serious science fiction or serious metaphysical horror. It's a fabulous book, that is.
Well, just the tone we get at the very start of the Heresy, of a very high science fiction setting that's got a little bit of grimdark around the edges.
Yeah.
But it seems like things are coming into the light, and then we know it's all going to go downhill, and it's been a journey of just going, just take this turning, please. You can be better. You can be better. It's like, oh, God damn it.
And it just isn't going to happen, right? It just isn't going to happen. And I love the way it's taken such pains. I mean, I will say this, the traitor Primarchs have had all the songs in the Horus Heresy, haven't they?
Yeah.
a lot of the loyalist Primarchs have been given a little bit of short shrift, like Rogel. Really, Rogel came into his own in the Siege of Terror. He's actually a really good character in the Siege of Terror, but up until that point, he didn't have a great deal to do.
No, he was basically just an imperial asshole for a lot of it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the first we see of him is really when he's punching Garrow for telling him the truth, right?
Yep.
Because he won't listen.
Yep, and I think next time we see him, he's chewing out Sigismund for.
Yes. for being Sigismund,
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
What's that? I mean, Korax. He's had some good. What he's had has been good, but
it hasn't been much of him. But the traitor Primarchs, oh my god, they've really. I mean, obviously, people. There is going to be more enthusiasm for them because writing the fall of a character, writing a villain, is loads of fun, isn't it? It's loads of fun. But I'm still shocked to the depths they go with some of them.
Oh yeah, I mean, Fulgrim's probably the shallowest of them all, which. It's completely in character. He falls for the shallow of reason.
Completely in character. But even with him, they go to this place that really shocks me. Like in Angel Exterminatus, when he ascends, when he's in the midst of ascending, you get this wonderful metaphysics. For him, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is the best thing ever. When he does ascend and becomes the demon Primarch of Slaanesh at the end, he sees all of creation. He sees all of reality from the perspective of an immortal. And it is this moment of the most sublime ecstasy. It is wonderful. And you read it and you think, I could go for that. That sounds good. It's you almost like feel, I can understand this. I can understand why you would turn to chaos. I can understand for that chance.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Angron, of course, probably has the most tragic backstory in all of 40k.
Arguably the most simplistic, least interesting character from Chaos Primarchs. Suddenly, in Aaron Dembski Bowden's hands, becomes the most interesting, the most complex, the most tragic, the one with the most pathos. And this is another thing that's happened with the Horus Heresy. It has bled over into 40k. So details that didn't exist before. For example, stuff like the World Eater's homeworld of New Syria. That didn't exist before. That did not exist before this. Awesome stuff.
It was just redacted, I think, originally.
Yeah, you didn't have. But they didn't even mention it. They didn't even mention the World Eater's homeworld.
Most of the others had mention of it, but the World Eater was just like.
Yep. Whatever.
But the World Eaters themselves, I mean, where they came from is the most. Because originally, they pitched them in one. I think it was in the Angron novella. They showed them prior to the Legion fully becoming fitted with the butcher's nails, and you see them as arguably the most disciplined of the legions, the ones who have the most self-control, who fight in very tight, regimented formations on the battlefield.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, this is something people often don't realize. The butcher's nails themselves are introduced in the Horus Heresy.
Yeah, and they're probably
one of the
biggest changes to the law that you'll find.
Absolutely. I mean, there was vague mention in their background before that they used
psychosurgery. It was never really.
It wasn't detailed. It wasn't specified. It wasn't like a specific device or process. But here, you get the butcher's nails, which are now part of the background, part of the rules, part of their equipment.
And every World Eater character into Fluff now, it's a defining feature for them. And it's
I mean, it's influenced models, for God's sake, right? I mean, like the new World Eaters range, all of them have the butcher's nails, including Angron. That's what amazes me. That is, I mean, the way the fluff, the background that they've written, the narrative has influenced the physical aspects of the game. That's incredible. It's so powerful. I love that. I love that to bits.
I think as well, it's worth saying that one of the things the Horus Heresy has done, and it's done very, very well, is introduce you to a lot of characters that you probably haven't given a huge amount of thought to over the years. I mean, before this, did anyone really consider what Vulcan was like?
Yeah,
and Vulcan's come out of it as being one of the more strong characters that you'd ever find in any Black Library fiction. Yeah, Vulcan's an incredible character.
He really is. Ugarte Khan, of course,
Yeah.
really given, really one of the least detailed in terms of character Primarchs out there before these books.
And they leaned into that. They made him a very enigmatic character to start with as well.
Yeah,
and they slowly filled in the gaps. And I mean, to the point where I'll be honest, he might be my favorite Heresy era Primarch.
He's really good. I like him a lot. I must admit. I mean, my favorite amongst the loyalists is always probably going to be Lionel Johnson because I like him. But look what they've done with him as well. They've really leaned into that ambiguity.
Yeah.
Where you don't really know where he stands. I mean, there's that wonderful detail that he, right up until the beginning of the Unremembered Empire, he doesn't know who he's going to side with in the war.
Yeah. Well, he gives off those siege engines to Perturabo.
Yeah, right, he does. It's like, ooh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But again, they played the line off beautifully because they had... Was it? No, it was in the Rush Primarch's novella.
Mm-hmm.
They jump forward to... Because we see his and Lion's famous fist fight.
We do.
Start of their feud, which is a wonderfully written piece in itself. But then it jumps forward to post-heresy, where Russ basically lets Lion impale him.
Yeah.
And the Lion's in tears. He's a blubbering mess.
It's interesting, right?
And that's really... Because we haven't read about it in... We know what happens, but we haven't actually had any fiction about it yet.
No.
So that's our last meeting of time we see the Lion until Son of the Forest.
All right, until 40k, yeah.
And that version of the Lion from that book, to me, that's informed absolutely by what happened at the end of that scene of post-heresy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a Lion who's much more aware of his own flaws, much more contemplative.
Yep.
And in some of his reminiscences about his brothers, it was something I realised that Russ and Johnson actually have the most similar backstory of the Primarchs.
Very similar, right?
Both marooned on Death Worlds, both raised... Russ admittedly had a pack of wolves to raise him, but neither of them had human contact until they were pretty much adults.
Yeah.
The other Primarchs all had certain amounts of human contact prior to...
It's true.
In their development, even if, say, in Kurz's case, it was not great.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Kurz is going, you were raised by wolves? I wish I was raised by wolves.
Yeah.
All right. Kurz is exception because he grew up in a world where there was nothing to raise him.
Yeah. Altarion obviously was raised by those alien things, those weird overlords, whatever the hell they are.
But they all kind of like had cultures that raised them, apart from those two.
Yeah, it's true.
So and they're very similar dynamics there, because Russ they both put on an axe.
Yeah.
The Lion puts on this face of civility, and whilst Russ plays up his barbarian nature. Where in actuality, it's why in the pre-heresy fluff that we had, it was always the Lion and Russ coming to relieve the Emperor.
Yeah, the Lion and the Wolf.
Whereas now they've made it much more the Lion, Gilliman,
yes,
plus Russ and Korax.
Yeah, that's right.
Those two very much more of an afterthought. It's just been really interesting.
It has the way it's expanded these characters. It were just really up until this point archetypes.
Yeah.
You know, and made them characters. I mean, one of my absolute favorites, Magnus. Magnus is, I mean, they've really lent it, whether by intention or not, but this notion that Magnus did nothing wrong. I mean, yeah, he did a few things wrong, but they've really lent into the humanity of him. Yeah. You know?
Which they've made choices ones that you can understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
He might make a wrong choice, but you understand why he's chosen what he has.
That's right. They're the wrong choices for the right reasons.
Yes.
That's generally it, isn't it? I mean, and also, again, expanding upon this notion that it wasn't just in the original fluff, the Emperor just overreacts. You know, he doesn't try to the thing that Magnus does in the original Fluff is he just uses his psychic powers to try and warn the Emperor about Horus, but the Emperor won't listen because it's psychic, it's tainted by chaos. Now, in the Horus Heresy, they've deepened that, they've expounded upon it so that Magnus inadvertently, by the way, disrupts the experiment in the dungeon beneath the Imperial Palace, which is great. I mean, that's wonderful. I mean, there's a great moment in A Thousand Suns towards the end when Magnus emerges in his spirit form from the portal, the webway portal, and he's almost like an echo of his future demonic self. He's massive and he's fiery, and there's this moment of psychic communication between him and the Emperor, and Magnus knows that he's fucked up. Big style. And that's it. It's wonderful. It's this wonderful moment of self-realization. But later on, it's echoed. There's this great moment where Zeech talks directly to him. You know, where he finally makes contact with Zeech. And Zeech is like, well, you know, I'm going to actually talk straight with you for once. Your father would have enslaved you to sit on that damn throne of his forever, fighting my demons. Forever. That's what you would have been doing. You would have been a slave. Even in the most ideal manifestation of this universe, you would have been a slave. I am going to recreate you. You are going to be everything you ever wanted to be. You are going to be arcane knowledge made manifest. Doesn't that sound nice?
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, yeah, actually.
You get what he's done. But even then, Magnus doesn't fully fall until...
No, later on.
Fury of... Is it Fury of Magnus?
It's Fury of... Is it Fury of Magnus? I don't...
It's the Siege of Terra Novella that he's in.
It is, that's right. Because he gets in, doesn't he? He gets into the Imperial Palace. Right, wow.
He only fully falls because he tries to get past Vulcan, who pummels the shit out of him.
Yeah, he ends up killing Malkador, doesn't he? I mean, it doesn't mean anything because Malkador's a perpetual, but you know.
No, this would have been Malkador's final death.
Is this his final? Is it? That's right. Yes.
Because there was another perpetual there, who I can't remember her name. So I forgot about the woman who she always came back.
Yeah.
In another location, she was with Malkador at that time, and she got gunned down by Magnus's Thousand Sons that were with him. Malkador got burnt to
nothing.
Blackened skeleton.
To nothing. Yeah.
And she gave up her remaining lives to bring Malkador back.
Oh, right. So that would have been his end, you know?
Yeah, that would have been his end.
Wow. So, that's when Magnus fully accepts, isn't it? That's when he becomes the deep Trimarch of Zeech.
Not even that point. It's when he gets into the throne room, tries to approach the Emperor to speak to him, and Vulcan stops him.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was one of Magnus' sons dies or one of Vulcan's sons dies. I think it's one of Vulcan's sons dies because Vulcan then basically stops messing around and goes full ham.
Yeah.
And Magnus has no choice at that point. He has to fall because that's what boots him out of the palace entirely.
Yeah. Yeah, because of course he can't be in as a demon. He can't be there, right?
Rejects him entirely at that point.
Yeah, so that's very cool.
It's actually kind of interesting to realise that because before so much of it was that the demon Primarchs arrived on Terra at the siege in their full power.
In their full forms, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, what we've got here is Mortarion is in his full form, but he's still learning fully what he is.
Yeah, he's still not there, is he? He still doesn't really understand.
Yeah, he's not. He's ascended, but he's not really accepted it until he faces Garrow.
Fulgrim's having a blast. He knows exactly what he is, and he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's
Fulgrim and his boys, they buggered off to do
whatever it is they're doing with
they're literally rending the masses down into God knows what.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand why they haven't done a Siege of Terra novel about that. I wish they did. Yeah. But I kind of understand why, because it would have had to have had at least a PG-15 certificate stamped on it.
It would have to have lots of explicit warnings on it, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? For adults only, yeah?
Angron, meanwhile, is playing pinball with the planet Earth.
Yeah, I mean, the arrival of Angron on Terra is the most metal thing, isn't it? Where he comes through riding the hull of the damn Conqueror.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. It's brilliant.
I mean, Angron's whole journey up until he meets Sanguinius is just a series of heavy metal album covers.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much. And that fight with Sanguinius, that's not in the original fluff either. Sanguinius fights Cabanda and that was it, right? That at the Siege of Terror. But then in this version, he fights Cabanda and then Angron.
Right then, guys.
Which...
What I'm going to do is we're going to dive into the book, because I've got a feeling that no matter how I want to try and run this, we're going to get in.
Yeah, good luck with that.
What are you going to do? I mean, this book is huge. This is, I mean, as we've been discussing, this is an attempt to draw together all of these disparate narrative threads and concepts and ideas from 13 odd years.
Yeah,
13 years. 20, 25 writers.
Right. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Just to attempt it, I don't, and as a writer, I do not envy Dan Abnett this project. I really don't. I wouldn't want to do it. No, definitely not.
No. And he seems to have taken it with a plume. Right. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically pick out bits and bobs that we want to talk about, things we find interesting, and just let the conversation run from there. I'm going to start with two things. Number one, I just want to mention that Titans being crucifixed on the wall is the single most 40k thing I've ever heard of in my life, and it is incredible. It is a image that just sits in your brain, and it's just I love it.
It's a very desolate image, isn't it? Like this is the nadir, isn't it? This is how far things have gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's just nothing but nihilism left.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. It is a world of nihilism. But the main thing I really want to just throw out there, and it's something from slightly later on in the book, and it's Horus. Horus himself. I really want to get into a conversation about Horus.
His characterization, how interesting.
Those snippets at the start of each section.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, I generally thought to start with that they may have been proper flashbacks to his recordings.
Yeah.
But as it goes on and you suddenly start to realise, hang on, this scene, right? Oh crap, he's off the deep end, isn't he, boys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Writing Horus like that was a really brave decision. Writing him almost like someone who has dementia, right? Where he's having these flashbacks to his far past, and it's incongruent with what he is and what he's doing in the present.
Yeah, and I think the way that kind of turns out as well, which we'll get to a second, makes it even worse in a way. There's having Horus having this disconnect from reality, this disassociated state that he's in throughout these parts of the books. It creates a very sympathetic character, and it draws you in. It makes you feel bad for him, and it's one of Abnett's. Abnett is a master of bombast, but you often forget how good he is at using the written word to trick you.
Yeah, the sleight of hand that he plays is really clever. You are thinking, of course, well, this is the corruption of chaos. This is Horus losing his mind, losing his sense of self as the chaos gods are saturating him, and it's not that.
No, it's not. So
it's not that.
So you've been drawn into this version of Horus. There's a real sense of sympathy that runs with him, and the reveal is like a knife to the throat, because Horus isn't going mad. He isn't disassociating. He isn't suffering from any form of dementia. He is basically fractured as a way of hiding his power from the Emperor.
Right, as a gambit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Really, like, what the hell? That really was a like, what the fuck moment.
Yeah.
It's very clever, and I loved as well, related to that, one of the questions we've always asked all the way through this series is, why the fuck does he drop the shields around the Vengeful Spirit? Why does he invite the Emperor aboard? Because it just doesn't make sense, right? He's won. He's won. The Earth, the Terra is destroyed. As people point out to him, he could have just bombarded Terra from orbit and he would have won. But he can't. because it's not what the Chaos powers need, right?
Mm.
That's not how they work. There's no poetry to that. There's no meaning to that. It has to be this way because they're narrative abstract entities. It has to be this confrontation. And justifying it in that way actually works so well
Yeah.
with the metaphysics.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It just creates a horrific moment of, right, okay, I understand what's happening here. The Chaos powers have saturated him and he may be swollen with power, but the man is gone. The man is completely gone. And it's a wonderful because it draws you back to that old Will King, the Emperor and the Whoremaster, where when the Chaos powers flee from Horus, he returns to being himself, and the Emperor can see it in his eyes. So
but he can't let him.
No,
he can't let him remain.
No,
he has to.
Yes,
obliterate him utterly. Because if he doesn't, they'll come back.
Absolutely.
But I'm wondering, are they going that way with this one? Because it seems to me at the end, and the death inverts that almost totally.
It does.
We get all the way through this notion, this recurring notion of the Dark King. The Dark King is coming. The Dark King is rising, and it's Horus, right? And what we get at the end of the End and the Death Part 1 is this notion that Horus, whether he's deluded in this or not, or whether he could actually do it, is trying to overmaster chaos. He's trying to become the new power, the new god, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's exactly.
It's very much trying to. Effectively, it's humanity's version of the fall of the Eldar.
Yeah, right. Writ large, yeah, absolutely.
And done much more quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, and also just without sadly reaching the heights that the Eldar did. At least the Eldar did manage to have a universe-spanning civilization at one time. Humanity hasn't even managed that.
No.
Well, the fascinating thing is that technically humanity's had several of those at this point. We just haven't seen any of them.
They've just failed.
They're all
horribly.
so far back in the past.
Yeah.
But no, it is a fascinating thing with Horus, especially. Now, I don't know about you, but how on board are you if the idea that's been floating around that possibly Sanguinius may not do what we expect in the next book?
It's hard to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
It feels like that might be the case. I don't know.
Because we know he's dying. He knows he's dying.
Yep.
And there's been this undercurrent that everyone's acknowledged that he should have been War Master. He is the greatest of the Primarchs, not Horus.
Yeah.
He had the character, but then in turn we've seen over many books that he's racked with self-doubt and the flaw that runs in him and his sons he's well aware of, but keeps it a secret anyway.
Horus knows though, doesn't he? Horus knows about the issues with the gene seed.
So there's this question of, well, do we think it will actually be Sanguinius falling to Horus, or could Horus find that the gods think, well, hang on, you're trying to screw with us. This chap, though.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be a vault fast? I mean,
because they wanted Sanguinius. I mean, they wanted him back into as far as from where Eagles tread, where Angels tread.
Yeah, they tell him so in Cygnus Prime, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, they tell him so. You know, we want you. And they show him, don't they? They actually show him what he could be. You know.
And let's forget, by this point, he's just beaten the shit out of Carbanda and Angron back to back.
Pretty impressive, right?
I don't think any other character in the Heresy, apart from the Emperor, would have had a hope in hell of doing that.
No, you're probably right.
Not on their own. And this wasn't even Sanguinius at his peak. He was battered to shit and back at this point.
Yeah.
So there's some interesting possibilities there. And of course, poor Rogel Dawn.
It's some of the. I mean, that's Dan Abnett showing his Lovecraftian background there, which I know for a fact Dan Abnett's a Lovecraft fan. The sequences with Rogel Dawn on technically aboard the Vengeful Spirit, but not. You know, in some other place, some other metaphysical realm. Ooh.
That is some good
Say
stuff.
the words.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is some good stuff. That is some great stuff. In fact, all the sequences aboard the Vengeful Spirit after the Emperor's little team teleport aboard are fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that we actually see custodians fail.
Yeah, and
They
fail hard,
Yeah.
right? Wow, they actually they actually are corrupted.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. Did not expect that.
Nope. I expected them to fall.
Yeah,
As
like
in
fighting.
die, but not.
Yeah, but not to like spiritually fall.
No. Yeah, you don't see that one coming at all. And the entire sequence with the custodians arriving on the Vengeful Spirit and just being utterly ruined, which then leads to one of my favorite bits of the book, which is the trying to use the warp to attack the Emperor is like trying to throw fuel onto a fire.
Yeah.
Bad
idea.
And you get a full, proper idea of what the Emperor stole from the Chaos Gods. Because let's face it, that's what he did.
Yeah, it's a Promethean myth. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a Promethean myth. Yeah. That's what he is, right? That's the seat of his divinity, really. It's stolen. It is absolutely stolen.
Yeah, it's either stolen or it's been misplaced. You know, there's a lot of the Emperor that, for somebody who has not really been in a lot of the Horus Heresy, which is kind of it's annoying, but I understand why.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
overexposure would have been a mistake with that character.
Absolutely, and now that we can get to see him, it's like, oh, shit's hit the fan. And the answers of where he's been and what he's been doing is, right. A lot of this is now making sense, because it did start to feel a bit weird that we weren't seeing the Emperor at all.
Yeah. But no, I mean, his idea, of course, we get a kind of reveal of his ultimate plan here, which is he's trying to make humanity a new permanent place to live, which is in the Webway, right?
Yep.
It's the Eldari's original plan and the Old One's original plan. Remove yourself from this corrupt universe in another place, another state and time, insulated from the warp.
Yeah, and what's the problem with it? What's the problem with the Emperor's plan? The big problem is, he's got it all wrong.
Yeah.
He's misunderstood what the Eldar were trying to do.
Yeah.
Nobody ever thought to ask the Eldar.
So there's another layer of tragedy there, right? It was never going to work. It was never going to work in the first place. It would never have worked.
No, and it's something I find absolutely amazing and fascinating, that the big old plan, it actually falls at the first hurdle, because he's totally misunderstood and misjudged what the Eldari were trying to do.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, and it's tragic, and it's sad, and it's so arrogant, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's just a perfect way to find out what was happening and what he was trying to accomplish.
You know what? The Eldar try all the time. For all of their problems, for all of their arrogance, throughout the heresy, they really try. They go to Fulgrim and they try to warn him, and that doesn't work. They go to the Emperor any number of times, and it doesn't work, you know?
Yeah.
So...
They have a Cabal.
Yeah.
Revenge. Older.
Yeah.
I've forgotten his name. Aldrad. He decides to burn that down.
He does, doesn't he?
Try it his own way, which doesn't really work, so on brand for him.
Yeah, yes, especially in recent years. Bloody hell. Talk about a fall from grace.
Yes, we do need to check if his middle name is Teclis, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, he is kind of 40k Teclis, isn't he, in many respects?
He is, but he doesn't have the staggeringly stupid decisions that Teclis makes.
I don't know. You know, he did destroy half of BL Tarn.
Yeah.
True. But he didn't
may have resurrected a god of death that may not be in the Eldar's best interests.
Yeah.
We're not sure. We're
Yeah.
not
Nom, nom,
sure.
nom.
Although, I did always like the idea that Bealtan fractured into a fleet.
Yeah,
That kind of I liked that as a way of acknowledging that the world ships are actually much more than just a world ship. They are
they can.
components.
Yes,
They
they're
can-
components. They can be
Yeah.
like separated into smaller sections. That's kind of
Yeah.
cool, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, tangent.
Yes. Sorry. Apologies. Yeah.
Why apologise? It's the Fluffenhammer way. Tangents has happened all over the place. But yeah, so I think it's just amazing to me that we finally get a real defined answer to both what the Emperor was doing and what the Emperor stole from the Chaos Gods.
Yep.
Because it's always been hinted at, people have said that they consider what he did to be stealing from the Chaos Gods. The Chaos Gods themselves, obviously, like little
They
bastard stole.
obviously consider it stealing. They really do.
Little bastard stole my milk, that type of thing. So actually having this moment where Horus unleashes his full might and the Emperor goes, thank you very much, and just freaking ricochets it right back.
Yeah.
It's a moment of, oh no.
Yes. Oh
Yep.
dear. I done fucked up.
Yep. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because Horus's hand is forced. He doesn't have any choice. This
Yeah.
is the way this story is going has to play out.
Yeah. Because we know that Gilliman and Verlaine, they're hours away. No one else does.
No,
But
Horus does. And in the metaphysics, just in terms of the pure metaphysics, if he wants what he wants to happen, it has to be this way. There has to be the face-to-face confrontation.
yeah.
Of course, yeah.
That's the way the story goes, right?
Yeah.
And these are entities and forces of abstraction, of mythology.
Absolutely. He's become a part of the story himself. He has to play his part.
There's a meta quality to it in that regard that is actually really interesting. That's manifested in the notion of chaos. The fact that they are narrative entities.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I love that. I love that to bits.
Do we know, or do you guys know, everybody who is summoned during the final siege on Terra? All the demons that are summoned into creation.
Oh, Horus does.
I've got a
Horus
list here.
definitely does. He lists them, doesn't he? Balacor's amongst them, isn't he?
Yep.
And Doombreed, I believe.
Yeah, the Drachnien.
Nakari.
Oh,
Drachnien is there.
I
Ooh,
imagine
yes.
Bellicor had a whale of a time getting summoned to the Siege of Terra.
Oh, I bet he was most pleased about
Yeah.
that. God almighty. I bet he hated Horus.
God, give me a couple of chapters in the next book of Bellicor just being
a
most-
petulant bitch,
just
right?
being disinterested.
Yeah. He's just
Just-
petulant all the
yeah.
time. He
Yeah.
really is. I mean, if it's Vashtor, it's Abaddon, it's Archaon in AOS, obviously. He's just petulant, you know.
Yeah, it's great.
Angry Cups of Tea with Bellicor, Part 1.
Yeah.
So the list is Doombreed, the host of Drachnien, Bellicor, Nakari, Krogath,
Nakari, yes.
Scarbrand, the Mask, Bubonicus, Ulkier, from Dawn of War.
Oh,
Jesus Christ.
that's cute. That's
Yeah. All summoned by the person Horus thinks is Zardu Layak.
cute. Mm.
And it's... Do we know who this person actually is? Because Horus keeps talking about someone and talking to somebody that he thinks is Zardu Layak. I don't think he's actually ever given a name, is he, in this?
No, I don't think so.
No. So we don't know who this person is that he thinks is. And whoever this person is the ones doing all the summoning and bringing all the demons to Earth. So who the hell are you and what are you doing?
I mean, that's interestingly one of the problems with Horus at this point, isn't it? He's so disconnected from reality that he keeps calling characters different names anyway.
Yeah, keeps moving back into the past and talking to talking to members of his...
Malagurst. He talks to Malagurst the Twisted a lot. Malagurst has been dead for a while.
Yeah, and he talks to Garrow and Torgaradon at several points as well, doesn't he?
He does, yes. And Torgaradon is a demon now, isn't he? He's some sort of weird Tormageddon, that's right.
Even it speaks to Sejanus, and that one hurt for some reason. I don't know why, but it's just really sad. It's like, Sejanus is gone.
Yeah, that is kind of sad, because it does suggest there's a little bit of who Horus was still knocking about in there somewhere.
Yeah. Of course, the other cool thing about Horus is that he knows that the Gilliman and the Lion are close.
They're on the way. I like the fact that he's afraid of that too.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. You know, I mean, I can see why. I mean, the Ultramarines, even as diminished as they are still one of the biggest fleets, aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, and with the Dark Angels alongside them, that's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I mean, those are the two most untouched loyalist forces left.
Yeah, that
So,
would be terrible, especially after like the traitor forces have been so diminished throughout the siege.
Shall we discuss the Dark Angels for a little while?
I was going to say that.
Right, there are
Should we talk
Dark
about
Angels
Corswain and his Corswain's adventures at the Astronomicon?
There are Dark Angels on Terra.
Yeah.
What the hell? That wasn't part of the fluff before.
Yeah.
No.
When they first showed up, what was it, 2 or 3 books back?
Yeah, and they're not just Dark Angels; they're fallen angels.
Yeah.
Well, they don't know they're fallen.
No,
Because
but they
Corswain
are.
is, I mean, Corswain is Johnson's chosen. He's his seneschal. He's literally
That's
the
right.
second in command for Legion now, above
Yep.
even Luther.
Mhm.
And he's picked up reinforcements on his way to Terra
Yep.
from Caliban. So now he has a
Yep.
whole bunch of fallen on board,
Yep.
including the current cipher, which is just like,
Which is
okay.
fascinating, right?
Yeah.
One wonders, doesn't one? Is that him? Is it the man himself, as we know him in 40k?
Yeah, because I mean, we're on what, our third Lord Cipher at this point?
At this point, yes.
Well,
Seraphal haven't taken up the mantle, and
Yes.
he and his Cabal playing their own games. But compared to what happened in the last time we saw the Dark Angels, where I thought, oh, there's literally a traitor on board. No, they were trying to keep their own secrets.
Yeah.
Not stuff up the relighting of the Astronomicon. They're still working to help.
Yes, fascinating, right? Including the fallen ones. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
weird, right? It's really strange.
Well, it leans really hard into the idea that the Dark Angels, even the ones on Caliban, most of them haven't fallen or fallen completely. But some of them don't even know that they've fallen. They're just fallen orders.
Yeah.
So they're still Space Marines of the First Legion committed to defense of Terra in all that entails.
Just as an aside, I love the dichotomy between them and the Death Guard who are arrayed against them. The description of the Death Guard is absolutely like Lovecraftian horror. It's just like body horror. It's brilliant.
Because what was it? The Death Guard are very much like, oh, should we go over here? Yeah, might as well.
Yeah.
And again, distances just going smush.
Yeah.
What should be miles is like a few hundred meters. Like, oh crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bit where the Dark Angels are looking over the parapets of the fortress, the mountain fortress that they're in, and the Death Guard are climbing up the outside like beetles or like carrion. It's just brilliant. It's wonderful, wonderful notion.
Yeah, the way they characterize the Death Guard and their transmutation into
so good.
the Plague Marines has just been...
It's been really good. I've really enjoyed it. I mean, some of the really lurid descriptions of the horror that they're going through in stories like the buried dagger, is it? And the previous Death Guard novels, Last Flight of the Eisenstein. Really, really good stuff. Really good stuff. Very, very, very deep body horror, which is what you want from the Death Guard, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. One of the things that the Death Guard have been throughout the entirety of the Horus Heresy is absolute body horror. They've been incredible from the very beginning with that. What was he called? The Lord of Flies in Garrow.
Yes, I can't remember his name, but I know the one you mean.
Yeah, that was nasty. That was creating the first Death Guard as we know them was just one of the more terrifying aspects. And it's something that's weird to me about Horus Heresy as a whole, actually. As this has gone along, there is a sense of the horror becoming normalized.
Yeah.
And we've seen it with the Chaos Gods. The Chaos Gods, at the very beginning of the Horus Heresy, these abstract, not personalities, but forces of nature, that interested me a hell of a lot. And it was I almost got a little bit sad when everything kind of fell into place, and the Chaos Gods had personalities, and the demons had more personality and agency.
Yeah, when it
Yeah.
became recognizable, right? Rather than sort of that ineffable, unspoken horror.
And I think what they tried to do was the very act of the Horus Heresy solidified them in a way that they weren't before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I think is what they were trying to do, but didn't quite get it to gel, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, it's weird having these what's it, the primordial destroyer.
Yeah.
You know, that is such a great term.
Yeah, it's a great concept, isn't it? For chaos itself, yeah.
Yeah, but then of course you get to about the halfway point and you have, Zeech turning up and talking to Magnus. You've got Slanesh turning up and
talking to Fulgrim.
Poking Fulgrim in the face. Go on, you want to. I don't think Khorne ever turns up and starts talking to Angron other than to
No,
maybe...
actually, I mean, one of the more interesting things about Angron's fall is he doesn't even know who Khorne is when he ascends.
Yeah.
No.
It's all to do with Lorgar sort of manipulating him and getting him into the right place at the right time,
God,
out of
Angron
his
is...
twisted sort of love for his brother. Which
that's right. That's right. Yeah, as Lorgar says, I saved him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, when Khan asks him what did you do to him? I saved him.
Yeah. God damn it, that sequence in Echoes of Eternity, it's just open, drop. It's like, oh, Jesus Christ.
It's so good. I mean, Angron is so well characterized in these stories. He really is. Especially, I mean, I love it when he ascends, when he becomes the demon Primarch. And you actually get sections that are from his perspective, what he's experiencing, what he's feeling. I love that. I love that to bits.
If you told me at the beginning of the Horus Heresy that the World Eaters would come out as being this horrendously tragic chapter that I loved a bit, I wouldn't have believed you. It's like, no, they're the World Eaters.
They're so good, aren't they? I mean, we follow one of the World Eaters in this book, don't we? What's his name?
Oh,
I can't remember his name, but he ends up getting blattered towards the end. But he's one of the apothecaries, isn't he? He's a World Eater.
He is, yeah.
Yes. He stops being an apothecary very quickly.
He does, yes. It does. I mean, it doesn't fly, does it, amongst the World Eaters at the moment? I
can't remember his name, but I do remember that the World Eaters around him were tearing the turrets off tanks and building a graveyard of tank skulls, which is one of the...
That's great. I mean, like, it's just so brilliant, isn't it? It's so over the top. It's so... I love it. I love it to bits.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've just started reading Red Angel.
Yes, I'm reading that at the moment.
And that's a lot of time ahead of a lot of World Eaters.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way that in that book Angron is like a force of nature in that book. You always see him from the perspective of someone else. Whether it's Kosalax the Forsworn, or whether it's that Grey Knight who's got a shard of Angron's sword still buried in his thigh. That's brilliant. I love that stuff.
Should we talk about the
Saren playing mind games with?
Oh, I mean, I love the fact Latara's in it. I love the fact she's still around. She's still a ghost in the Conqueror, and she's still in charge.
Yep.
She's still in charge of the Conqueror. That's awesome.
Well, the Conqueror knows who it likes, and it likes Latara Saren.
Well, she is the Conqueror now, technically, isn't she? They're almost like one entity at this point, and that is love it.
Yeah.
Oh god, the entire sad state of affairs when she's a data ghost wandering around. You still think you're human, don't you? Oh,
that reveal in Echo of Eternity was just like, you knew it was coming, but it's just like,
wow, it was fantastic. Still one of the great. I mean, people have taken her to their hearts as well. There's a fan base for Latara Saren. If they said like, oh, by the way, Latara is going to be a special character in the next World Eaters Codex, people would go nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, what was it? The guys at Hardcore Minis have done they've got several figures of her.
Have they?
And they're really good. Just alternate poses with different weapons in hand.
Oh, fantastic.
She's got the bloody handprint.
So
scar.
good.
It's perfect.
So good.
I'm tempted to get one anyway, just for the hell of it, because it's a lovely looking figure.
Yeah, she's an awesome character. Who doesn't love Latara?
Yeah, and of course there's the
Romans.
There's the meme of Angron handing handing her off to Khan,
Yes.
and her just shouting out loud, 5 the Ursus claws, and Khan getting heart eyes. It's one for best heresy memes out there. I love it.
Yeah, it is pretty good.
Shall we talk about the long day? Because this is something that has sat in my head since I read this book.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because one of my favourite types of horror is something I don't know what the hell you'd actually call it, but I call it quantum horror.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the act of reality breaking down.
Yeah, it's one of my favourites too. One of my absolute favourites.
Yeah. All right, it's what you find. I mean, you could call it cosmic horror, or
it's kind of Lovecraftian, isn't it? I suppose that's what would be the general term for it.
I think the best way of describing it is it's the entirety of In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah.
That it's reality no longer working towards the rules that it's always had. It fascinates me, and I love it.
Yeah.
So it's reality smushing together with another reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And neither one working quite right alongside each other.
I actually wrote an RPG about that called Days of Entropy many, many, many years ago, and it had a pen that would blow things up. Because you had things that had come from the reality that existed before the quantum hooks had smushed all of the realities together, and some items had incredible power, but you didn't know what they did until you tried them. So there was a pen that if you clicked it, it would blow something up with like the blast of a nuclear explosion 10 miles to your left.
10 miles. That's not actually that far away when it comes
no.
to a nuclear explosion.
You don't want to be that close to a nuclear explosion.
No. It was far enough away so you could see it happen before it hit you. But anyhow, so it is a form of horror that I adore and I can't get enough of, and will stick in my head for a very long time. And what this book does is beautifully unveil what chaos does to the material space.
We've seen hints of it in previous Horus Heresy books, but it hasn't gone full bore yet until this point, you know?
Yeah.
Terror is half sank into the materium, and as a result, time has stopped, which, think about that in a very logical sense. So yes, they show it by the clocks have started malfunctioning, clocks have stopped, but when you think about time itself as a concept, not the human version of time, which is minutes, seconds, hours.
No, the quantum notion of time, like cosmic time.
Yeah, that events have to follow events, When that breaks, and you have people discussing how it feels like they've been fighting this war for years, it's not an element of speech, it is not a phrase, it's not a turn, it is reality.
It's what's actually happening, right?
Yeah.
Time has become so relative at this point. It's wonderful.
It's incredible. The idea that you're fighting for years, but you haven't actually had any breakfast.
Yeah. And people are, I mean, it's happening on a physical level as well, isn't it? So, like, you know, the world is inverting, walls are becoming flesh, and, you know, the sky is becoming water, and it's just madness. It's madness up and down.
Well, it's the literal manifestation of Phil tagline. In the grim darkness of a far future, there is only war.
Yeah, absolutely.
Take it to its logical extreme.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating, this notion of terror now being this little bubble of unreality, which means that stuff could be happening in there that we've never seen before. You know, that's never been described before in the stories or in the fluff. It's wonderful. It's a very clever way of Abnett setting up, like, well, I can kind of do what I like.
Yeah.
You know, I have license here because everything is so uncertain and unstable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've already said we've got Keela and her pilgrims on their journey, which was running over the course of the entire book. And again, it's quite fun because not only is time breaking down, but we're also getting a much better sense of the scale of the palace, because
which is, of
done a
course,
wonderful job of that by getting to emphasize that. Yeah, he built his palace on the Himalayas.
On the Himalayas. I mean, you have to. I mean, and to get a sense.
The only one
of
that's
that,
left is Everest.
Yeah.
That's where he built the Astronomicon. Everything else he leveled.
The Himalayas, right?
Yeah.
It's the size of a nation.
Yeah.
It's ridiculously huge. I mean, the scale of this thing.
And you have characters who are starting a journey at one end of it, on foot, forming a pilgrimage, gathering other survivors.
Forget most human structures that you know of in today. Forget Manhattan.
Yeah.
This is enormous.
Yeah. The Imperial Palace is just it breaks your mind, and that's before you start contemplating the scope of the defenses.
Yeah.
This is the innermost circle of the palace. This is the Emperor's private, personal sanctum, effectively.
Yeah. Conceptually, it's awesome, isn't it? Conceptually, it's just brilliant.
But then you get all these little symbols. So you got like Fafnir and Dominion Zephon off on their little journey fighting through the outhabs.
Yeah.
You've got, you have the evacuation of Dawn's command outpost. Get into their final location inside the palace itself.
You've got the little collection of rejects, I suppose, the Perpetuals, led by John Grammaticus, on their way.
Their journey up from the bowels of the palace.
Yeah, with Alfarius, quote unquote.
Yeah,
and
joined by Alfarius,
the Blessed Lady.
Yeah,
the Blessed Lady from the Wordbearer books reborn.
Yeah.
What the? That's brilliant. A Chaos Saint, effectively.
And a legionnaire of one of the destroyed legions.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just
okay.
They get to the throne room, and they're too late.
Too late. Yeah. That's a big theme in this book, in this story, desolation. It's a big theme. Whatever plans you've got, they're not going to work.
Yeah.
It's over, right? I mean, Adam actually used the phrase earlier, the end of history, which is something that Abnet would be aware of, because that's what's often used to describe World War One. It's the end of human civilization. The human experiment has ended with World War One, effectively, which is a theory that a lot of historians actually subscribe to. And everything since then has been a compromise, or a decline. That's what you've got here, manifested on a grand science fiction scale.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's funny you should mention World War One, because there's a lot of the dirt and the grime, the trenches of World War One that are found in the Siege of Terror books.
This is. I mean, Abnet's a historian. Abnet loves his history. He loves military history. He loves. He's got this obsession with the fall of civilization. So he loves the fall of Rome. He loves like the sacking of Alexandria, the fall of Constantinople. He knows all about that stuff.
He's the only person that's happy at the moment.
Right. It's all here. It's all here. It's all reflected in this story.
It's the fall of every empire imaginable.
Yeah. It's the regression of civilization, right?
And of course, the twist is that it's the empire that dies, but the body keeps going.
Yeah.
Which nicely leads us to Malkador. Poor Malkador.
Oh dear. Yeah.
And his agents.
I knew he'd end up on the throne eventually.
Yes, but the way he goes, he knew it was going to come to this.
Yeah,
he always did.
And it's a horrible thing. It weren't built for him, was it?
No. And you can see the toll it takes straight away. But the way he says goodbye to his assorted agents.
Yeah.
With those last. It could have very easily just been he set these last commands to each of them, but instead the fact that he took the time to say goodbye to each of them.
Yeah.
I
also like the fact that you get something very literal with regards to his name. I mean, he's been called the Sigillite for the longest time, and now we know why. This is how he communicates. This is how he gives his orders. He plants sigils in the minds of his followers, which are little sort of like they're mimetic, they're little freights of ideas and concepts, so he doesn't have to give them physical orders. It's a great idea, great notion. And the way Abnet describes the throne room, that's something we've never seen before. where it's reality. Again, it's Lovecraftian. It's reality warping. So there are layers and levels and dimensions to this thing that are entirely at odds with physical law.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the throne room's always been a, frankly, horrific construct, going right back to the early days.
It has, but it's always been a construct, hasn't it? It's always been a room, a chamber, you know?
Yeah.
Here it's a concept, here it's a notion. It's way more abstract here.
It also makes me sad because it's the first time that we can officially say that the Jacques Draco books are no longer in canon.
Nope.
Because
They definitely are not.
Jacques has been in there and it did not look like that.
No.
Well, it looked one way to him.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To
fair
be
enough.
fair,
Yeah.
to be absolutely fair, Abnett really takes pains to point out that this place is reality warping. So it's fine. And the way I love when he goes on, I mean, Abnett obviously loves his language. He loves his language so much. So
Yeah.
alongside all of the Gothic archaisms that he uses in this book, of which there are many, by the way, this is a deliberately wordy, verbose book where you will probably need a thesaurus at certain points. I certainly did. He also makes up a lot of terms. You know, within universe, and in one of them, he's listing all of the devices that are in or around the throne room, and it just goes on. You know, it's great. It's really good, fluffy stuff. You know, but they're words that that he's made up. They're terms that he's created.
I love Abnett's use of language. It just makes me so happy because you know what he's getting across.
Oh yeah,
just from the context cues.
Well, this is him again showing in his own. He's not doing it like in a conscious way, but this is him showing his literacy and his erudition. It's Gothicism. That's what he's going for. I mean, and that's what 40k is at its heart. It's a Gothic science fiction universe, and he's using that style here in the ultimate story of that universe. He's using that style, that literary style, and it's actually really clever. It can be alienating, you know. I mean, Lovecraft uses it too, and it can be really alienating. But I actually really liked it here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Although I did need a thesaurus. I did need to look up a couple of words for this one.
Yeah, same, to be honest. I got the online thesaurus out and started wishing I had heard of thesauri that I could just ride through the books.
And some of them are so specific, the terms that he's using, and so archaic that you won't find them on things like Wikipedia and whatnot. You need to go into some like really obscure forum about like military history or architecture or stuff like that.
Shall we talk about the Emperor himself for a little while?
Yeah,
because we get some information about Big Money E.
Big Daddy E.
Big Daddy E.
So
he was Alexander the Great.
Yeah, he was Alexander the Great, which has been bandied around for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's just confirmed here, which is, you know, makes sense actually.
And quite possibly he was Jesus. Which
I think there is a reference to Christ I believe in Legion, where Grammaticus says he wasn't Christ, but he was there.
Yeah.
He was on Golgotha, you know, he saw it happen.
Which it kind of blows my mind that they're just accepting that Christianity is a thing. It's like,
oh, it's great. Well, it would be, wouldn't it? I mean, this, you know, for all of its absurdity, I mean, the 40k universe is a fantasy or science fiction extension of real history.
Yeah,
so it would be.
But
you know, it's why you've got like references to like Lorgar makes reference to Blake.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean the religion.
They reference Shakespeare a few times.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
The Bard.
The Bard. Yeah, that's right.
Shake stuff. No, it's not that the religion exists. It's the fact that, according to Grammaticus and Pius, no, Jesus was real.
Yeah.
He was a guy. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, in this universe, it really makes sense. I mean, like, it makes sense that he could literally be how he was in the Gospels. You know, he could be a miracle maker in this universe, and it would make sense.
Absolutely.
It would make sense that he was a perpetual.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely it does. It makes perfect sense in this universe. It makes more sense than it does in our universe, quite frankly.
If Ollie turns around and says that I was actually Jesus, he wasn't.
If Ollie.
I would be, I'll be so up for that.
It's kind of more likely that it was John, given that his name is Joshua, and John is a derivative of it.
Absolutely, yeah. That would make me so happy if John Grammaticus was Jesus.
Oh God, this like really cynical guy. Yeah, that would be fun. Actually, that would be fun.
Yeah, I wasn't always like this. I used to.
I believed in things once.
I used to give fish to the hungry. I did. What are you doing, John? I always find it really weird that John has an American accent. That throws me. It really does. But anyhow, so yeah, the Emperor and Ollie Pearson, they work together.
Yep.
They knew one another, and I like the way Ol talks about him.
Yeah.
Not a fan, right?
Lack of any decorum towards him.
Yeah, not a fan at all. In fact, almost everyone who knew the Emperor before he was the Emperor disliked him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, there was because we met. Oh God, again I've forgotten her name.
Yes, the Astarte of it, basically.
No, well, it wasn't Astarte because Astarte is a separate character we did meet in the Valdor book.
That's right. That's
the
right.
Space Marines there, the Adaptus Astarte.
Yeah.
But we met the Perpetual, who was the other half of the Primarch equation.
Yes, the mother figure.
Yeah,
the mother goddess.
And I love, again, the fact that she really had no great affection for the Emperor at all.
Nope. None of them do. None of them who knew him before he was the Emperor really like him.
But even because a lot of them still worked with him up until the point that he was conducting his experiments.
Yeah.
Leading to the reunification wars.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that it was each one of them had a tipping point, and they're not necessarily the same. Whereas Ol just pieced out millennia ago.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, I'll be your war master, and then it's like, you know what, fuck you.
Yeah, he saw it coming, basically.
He's just been the eternal soldier ever since, and finally got a chance to retire. It all went to hell.
Well, isn't it interesting as well that these Perpetuals who are on their way to see him don't really know what they're going to do when they get there?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are options, right?
I mean, John clearly just wants to stab him.
Yeah.
As Ollie did in the past.
Although, even there's doubt, isn't there? He talks about how, if you could talk him down somehow, if you could actually talk reason to the man.
Yeah.
Good luck with that, by the way.
Ol probably would have been the only person who could.
Mm-hmm.
But he just gets there a little too late.
Yeah, and I just love that. The fact that they don't even get to have that big encounter. They don't get to have that big face-off. It's just... But it makes me wonder where they are going to go. What is this little band going to do now?
Well, I've just been building a little suspicion of whilst we've been having this chat. Because we know that the prototype Inquisition is out there now.
Yes.
Under Kinderman.
Mm-hmm.
We know that Gilliman takes over as Lord Commander for a time.
Yep.
There are candidates we've seen who could fill slots in what will become the High Lords.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I wonder if Ol might find himself forced into a position, shall we say?
Oh God, yeah, to actually become like one of the High Lords of Terror, one of the earliest High Lords of Terror.
Yeah.
He wouldn't like that, would he?
He wouldn't at all. but he might do it out of sense of duty.
Yeah, interesting.
Because if we know that, well, whatever comes back to Terror, to the throne room and gets him put in the throne, can't talk. It probably communicates only psychically, briefly, before getting plugged in.
Yeah.
If that was the last request, not even order, request to his first War Master,
he might just concede,
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that'd almost be worse from Ol's perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
He'd have to dedicate himself to
something he doesn't believe in, right?
Yeah.
The Imperium. He doesn't believe in it.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. I mean, there's a lot to be done, isn't there, in the next book?
Well, I mean,
there's a lot to be done.
one of the things I
say nothing of the fact that we know that there are cells of Alpha Legion underneath the palace.
Yeah.
Right. What the? Yes.
With
Alfarius has already gotten in like multiple times. He knows
Yeah.
exactly how to get in. So he could have ended this. He could have
Yeah.
just led Horus's troops into the
Absolutely.
palace at any
I mean-
point.
I mean, that was his whole shtick. He knows the Imperial Palace's securities better than anyone else.
Yeah.
including
it's brilliant.
Dawn.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, including Dawn. Yeah.
Yeah, he knows all the secret passageways. He's the one who forced Valdor to instigate the Blood Games
Yes. Yeah.
because he came that close to actually getting a shot on the Emperor.
Yeah. Wow.
And just the idea that there are these cells, and they for each stasis locked cell of Alpha Legion have 2 keywords, and whichever one they're given
Determines which side they're on, what
Yeah.
they go and do. That's awesome, isn't it? I
Yeah.
love that.
and
I
it's
love
so
that.
keeping with the way that they work.
Yeah. Hedging
that-
their bets effectively.
Yeah. But it also leaves us the possibility that you could end up with multiple cells being woken up
Yeah.
with conflicting commands,
Which fits with their present day fluff, of course.
Yes.
You know, because we just that's the whole thing with the Alpha Legion in the present day. Which ones are actual Chaos worshippers? Which ones are not? You know, which ones are kind of covert loyalists? Who knows?
Yeah. Is their Primarch dead?
Or
Maybe.
not? I mean,
Yeah.
well, which one? You know,
Yeah.
Omegon or Alfarius? Does
Yeah.
it matter? Yeah, there's a lot of mystery there, and I love it. I love it to bits.
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk then about the Remembrances and the Inquisition, because when that penny dropped, my jaw hit the fucking floor.
So Cyril Kinderman is like the author of the Inquisition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who would have expected that?
In hindsight, totally get it. It's
Yeah.
perfect. It is.
Makes sense. It
But
makes
back
sense.
then, reading Horus writing, you'd think, oh, he's the slightly lecherous
Mhm.
writer of histories.
You're
Who,
right.
Yeah.
Is at the end of his career doing one last jolly to cement his reputation. It's like, oh, by the way, he's also going to found the Inquisition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's going to be there during the War of the Beast.
Awesome. I love it.
It's insane.
It's very
Yep.
clever. It's very clever. Again, Abnett's really, really sort of crossing all his T's and dotting all his I's, you
Mhm.
know? He's
Yeah.
trying to establish how the 40k universe comes about
Yeah.
in X amount of millennia.
Here's a question for you guys. Talking about how the gulf of time between 30k and 40k. Where did the Perpetuals go? And
Yeah, now that is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are they around still?
Well-
Did something happen to stop them occurring?
Yeah, well, we know that there was only supposed to be one final Perpetual
Mhm.
born, and that was the Grey Knight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've forgotten his name, but he
Connor
was in
MacLeod.
the-
Yeah.
he was in the first Grey Knight Codex
Mhm.
Yeah.
as a special character.
Yeah.
I know what
And
you
he
mean.
was supposed to be the last Perpetual born, well, the last human Perpetual.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? But why? I mean, what happened? What? I mean, they're one of the great mysteries, of course. What is the metaphysics that brings about the perpetuals?
Yeah. Because none of them. Well, the Emperor is a very singular example,
Yes.
and we're not entirely sure if his powers were completely his own or if.
Nicked
We
from,
know that he took some.
he nicked him from Shaman's E8.
Well,
we knew-
well, that's
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
old stories. We don't
Yeah.
know what's true now, of
No.
course.
No.
Yeah, and we know he took some portion from the Chaos Gods.
We know that for a definite. He
juiced him up
absolutely
massively.
did. Yeah, that
But even
made him into like
but
the
even
god
before that,
figure.
he was an entity of a different nature to the other Perpetuals, who were all very. They seem to have very specific
Positions.
functions almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So Ol didn't seem to age, but he never seemed to die either.
Mhm.
He never seemed to be injured that badly. He just kept on going. So we've never seen him actually die, or he's
No.
never mentioned having died. He's just mentioned his lives and living.
Yeah.
John, we know, is an artificial perpetual.
Yeah.
Yep.
And all the others, well, Vulcan, we know, keeps coming back.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be his special juju.
We'll get to Vulcan in a minute, don't worry.
Much like the female perpetual who gave up her juice to Malkador.
Mm-hmm.
But the others all seem to be of a very different stripe. They all seem to have very specific functions and roles to play.
They're all parts of the engine that have been placed there purposefully.
Yeah.
And have they been placed there purposefully for this final push?
Oh, who knows, right? Who knows? It's one of the great mysteries. And where are they now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's if there's some long-term Zechian justice planned that happens at the end of this with perpetuals, I will not be surprised.
No, I wouldn't be surprised either, actually. It almost feels like that's inevitable, doesn't it? As though it's like just as planned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I mentioned with the Beckwin books, I've got a suspicion he's playing a very long game in that
very
regard
long
anyway.
game. Yeah, I mean, there are certain decisions. We've mentioned this before, but there are certain decisions in 40k history that don't make sense unless he is playing a deliberate game.
Yeah.
Leaving Angron, stealing Angron away from Nuceria and leaving his allies to die doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all. It's one of the stupidest decisions
Absolutely. But it's just like, what? Why?
Yeah,
why? Would you do that?
Why would you do that?
And
not telling Magnus. Before he even physically meets Magnus, him and Magnus have sailed the warp 1,000,000 times. That's how they meet psychically. He didn't think at any point to go, oh, you see that roiling mass over there? That's chaos, and that part of it is Zeech. And you are a bit susceptible to him because of your nature, yeah?
Yeah. But we want to try and stop it, so...
leave that alone, all right? Don't touch that.
Yeah. And like killing Mortarian's adoptive father before he can. It's like...
doesn't make sense. None of that makes sense.
Yeah. Which again is partly because they're in a metaphysical narrative.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? The way the Horus Heresy books in general have taken the problems with the story and have made them into story elements, made them into mythological beats.
Yeah. But I tell you what they have done. They've created a situation where they've made the what-ifs of the 30k and 40k universe some of the most fascinating thought experiments to run with.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's like imagining an Angron who didn't have the nails.
Yeah.
So he was this very empathic, still a deadly warrior, but retained his empathy, which is what he was supposed to have had.
Yeah, which makes sense when you look at his relationship to the other slaves on Nuceria.
Yeah, he was supposed to be the one who could relate to others the best, which would have made him a perfect complement in a lot of ways to Guilliman.
Yeah.
With one builds the Empire, the other one is the ultimate ambassador.
Yeah. What if one of the others had been made War Master?
Yeah. What if Mortarion what if the Emperor hadn't killed Mortarion's adoptive father, instead dropped him, well, took him down, but kept him alive for Mortarion to finish?
Yeah. Or went to Mortarion earlier. You know, instead of like just launching himself at Mortarion's father, went to Mortarion earlier.
Yeah.
Or
took Lorgar more closely under his wing.
Yes.
And explained things better to him.
Absolutely.
Said, I understand your nature, but this is dangerous.
Yeah.
Can you help me find a better way?
Absolutely. Yes. Here's the real truth. Here's what is going to lead humanity into ascension.
Yeah. And by the way, you see those two pricks out of the airlock?
Yeah, kill them both now. Absolutely. It will save you and the universe a hell of a lot of bother later on.
Yeah. Yeah. Corferin, what do you think of him? Oh, he's an asshole.
He's
Agreed.
a prick. Yeah. Erebus, bigger prick. Out.
Yeah. Yes. You see, as much as I want Erebus to be thrown out of an airlock, I want it to happen in a way that I get to watch. you know.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, I
it's not
know.
going to happen. He's still around. He's
Yep.
still
Yeah.
very happy.
You know, I'm still amazed that they've not put Erebus and Corfair on as playable
As
characters.
special
40k.
characters, right?
I mean, they have models for 30k.
And aren't they good?
Yeah, and we know they
Whoa.
both are still kicking around in 40k.
They are. They are. In fact, they're
Frustratingly.
doing very well by all accounts.
But somehow they're two of the most prominent named Chaos Space Marine characters who
with no models, no rules.
Yeah.
I suppose when it eventually happens, and it will eventually, God knows when Lorgar is released, when Lorgar, the Demon Primarch, is released, they'll be there. But that won't be for a long time. Fulgrim will come before that. I mean, my God.
Yeah. You say that, but you know.
Yeah, I say that now, obviously.
Look, if they do Lorgar, all we know is that Korax will be the next Primarch they release.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. It's got to be done, right? It's got to be done. But that's going to be interesting, isn't it? I mean, given what happens between Lorgar and Guilliman during the Heresy, because they really hate one another, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's a blood feud there.
So, one thing or two things I want to talk about is some Primarchs. So, on Earth, we've got Vulcan, Sanguinius, Dawn, and Valador. Valdor. I always try to call him Valador. I don't know why. Valdor.
Yagati's still around.
Yagati,
he's not very well.
He's in a coma.
Yep.
Yeah.
But he's...
Well, he did get impaled on Mortarion's scythe. Yeah.
But we do know now that he will get better, because was it Malcador gave him some juice?
I think
the Emperor
gave him a bit of a...
so
is it...
what happens is the Emperor, whilst he's on the throne, being absolutely ravaged by pain and doing all of his things, inspiring people, soothing civilians, directing the webway, reaches out, gets the Khan's soul, rams it back in, tells and Malcador brings him the rest of the way. And Khan's alive, will take months to heal, but once that's done, the Emperor snaps out of his webway mode and just goes, it's time to kick shit. So we've got Vulcan, Sanguinius, Dawn, Valdor, and an unconscious Khan.
Yeah.
This I want to talk about each in turn, because each of these three, Vulcan, Sanguinius, and Dawn, they've all had so much characterization that in some ways I never expected. Sanguinius probably the one I would expected the least to have a front and center place, because Sanguinius is Sanguinius.
But he's a big player, isn't he?
Absolutely.
He's one of the key factors of these books.
And it fascinates me how much characters like Guilliman have fallen out of the story. Not because there's no use for them, it's because they're
not there.
Yeah, they're not attached
They're
to it.
physically not there, yeah.
And
I mean, we all knew that the siege was going to lead to this point. I mean, I honestly didn't expect Vulcan to play any role in the siege.
No, that's a bit of a shock, right?
Yeah.
Vulcan's on Terra, because that wasn't part of the original fluff, and I love the fact that it is now.
Yeah, the fact that he's the last guardian of the throne room.
Yeah.
And that makes perfect sense as well for his characterization. He is the ultimate final deterrent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to know why I'm angry at Vulcan being on Earth?
Why is that?
Go on.
Because in Echoes of Eternity, it looked like we had an answer to what the Legion of the Damned were.
You still can. You still can.
Yeah.
There's a wonderful throwaway line revolving around the time that it's taken him to march back to Terra. And it's taken him an eternity, like millennia. He talks about how he's fought like wars and seen things that have driven him half mad, and he's lost himself, he's lost his mind so many times, only to get back. So you can still have an origin for the Legion of the Damned there. From him and Magnus's fight, you definitely still can.
Yeah, but it's like when he turns up and went, oh no. But also, yay, Vulcan.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still hoping that we get Ferris's for personification of the Legion at some point, because that I mean, the fact that he has no head, that makes Burning Skull make more sense.
I also want to point out that we've discussed many a time in the chats on who would play who in the Horus Heresy series, and I want Idris Elba to play Vulcan.
Yeah,
That's,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of
Well,
like that.
but I want him to talk in his Knuckles voice. Just so you can have him fighting Magnus. Do I look like I need your power? You know, that'll just make me super happy. But anyhow, yeah, it's such a strange one. That Vulcan and the Khan as well. They're both characters that have really come out of nothing
Yeah,
and become tent poles of
Yeah.
this series. They
they
are
definitely had the
incredible.
least up until
Well,
this
I mean,
point.
they'd
They had the least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of was in their favour. They had some of the least characterization
Mm-hmm.
existing.
Yep.
I mean, Khan, he's Genghis Khan in space.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's pretty
Well,
much it.
Well, he's
And-
Genghis Khan's son in space.
Yes, yes.
Is who he is, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And whilst Vulcan was big dude, sons are big dudes who like their families.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Pretty much
That,
it,
that
right?
was pretty much it. Likes fire.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Does a bit of forging.
And yet we now have so much more for both of them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, the Khan's easily become probably my favourite Heresy era Primarch.
Mhm.
To the extent I've been toying with possibly trying to do White Scars as an army, except I really remember I hate painting white.
Yeah, painting
Yeah.
white is not fun.
And trying to do all that red, sharp dagger line decoration is no.
Oh, successor chapter?
Well, I have got one
Yeah.
for 40k in my mind.
Yeah.
An Ultima Founding chapter, but I'm still trying to work out the colour scheme for that.
You could do the black scars and then just have them all in black armor with the little red bits, and you know, and they're basically just Death Company. As I
They kind of are, yeah. Ravenwood,
realize that
yeah,
as I keep
Ravenwood.
talking. Oh dear!
Yeah.
Forget everything I said. Yeah.
But no, it's fascinating, the characterization of the Primarchs. Rogel Dawn has really come into his own here. He had nothing to do in most of the rest of the Horus Heresy. But this is his baby, isn't it? You know, he
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
masterminding the Siege of Terror.
Yeah.
And one of the things you get from both Echoes of Eternity and this book is just how weary he is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's done everything he can, and it
Yeah.
wasn't enough.
It's over.
And now he
right?
has to let go.
Yeah.
I mean, was it Echoes or the book before where he issues the order to Sigismund especially to go off and start killing champions, be yourself.
That's Echoes, yeah. That's
Mhm.
Echoes.
And it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
shivers. And now he's given that order to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as we
But-
mentioned before, he also has one of the best horror sequences in the entire book.
Yep.
It's absolutely wonderful.
Oh God.
Which
Say
kind of plays
the
off the fact that
name.
he's kind of at the point where he's considering himself superfluous because he's fulfilled his purpose and failed.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah,
now
there's
taking the last chance to.
there's like a descent into nihilism, isn't there? And that's
Yeah.
what's manifesting around him. That's what the warp and the power of chaos is doing. It's
Yeah.
brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I really like Dawn, and honestly, that entire sequence, you know, the entire skulls for the say it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's nightmarish, and it affected me quite strongly, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah,
It's pretty good.
I did not expect that to go that way. I thought he'd be, I don't know, dumped somewhere with trying to cut his way out of.
That's what
through a
I was
horde.
thinking. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what
And-
I was thinking. Like,
This was even better.
yeah,
Frankly.
Yeah.
This was just like, oh crap,
yeah.
would they do this? But again,
Also, sorry, go on.
would they let him fall in a small way? But again, it would also kind of inform his personality post heresy, where he's very angry and insular and rejects Gilliman's reforms.
Absolutely, yeah. Goes off on a
Mm.
suicidal mission to
he
kill
breaks his
Perturabo.
legion against Perturabo's Circle of Iron.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
Iron
And-
Cage. That's
yeah,
right.
the
he
Iron
almost
Cage.
he almost destroys his entire legion, doesn't he?
Yeah,
It's
And it's
only
only-
because of the intervention of the Ultramarines that he survives.
yeah, and not even the Ultramarine Legion, the Ultramarines chapter,
Yeah,
a single
Yeah.
chapter of
Yeah.
Ultramarines saves him and his men.
and
it's
also he
just-
ends up facilitating Perturabo's ascension. I bet that goes down well.
Oh yeah,
Oh, dearie me.
Yeah, he
poor Dawn.
really fucks up there.
I wonder, is Dawn going to have a few minutes of falling?
Happy fun time as a berserker.
It'll be when he finds his dad.
Yeah.
Because he's the one who takes the Emperor's body back to Terror,
Yeah.
isn't it? So
Yeah.
that's when he'll break.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that they've made very clear for Heresy is that Dawn has more than almost any other Primarch. He bottles a lot of anger up inside.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That stoicism that he has going on. It's a bit of a front, isn't it? It's a bit of a mask, it seems. I mean, there are moments of this book, of course, where he's thinking, "I want to be out there.
Yeah.
I want to be fighting. I want to actually be doing what I was made to do, and not this anymore."
Because he's
God, I love
and
Dawn.
arguably that probably would have been a more effective use for him.
Probably,
But
yeah.
But he's resigned to his duty.
Mm-hmm. He does get one moment of fighting Fulgrim in one of the previous books.
Yes.
Doesn't go down well, though.
Well, he does
Depends on your
well.
definition of well.
He does fine, but Fulgrim is playing with him.
Yeah, but
that's the
Fulgrim
problem.
also...
Fulgrim is sort of like...
Yeah, but Fulgrim doesn't get what he really wants out of that fight, because Dawn basically bitch slaps him and then says, just looks at him with disgust when he sees what he's become.
Yeah.
And that's not what Fulgrim wanted. He wanted to dominate his brother, and he just couldn't. He had to pull on his demonic form to have a chance.
To have a go, yeah.
So... And then there's Sanguinius.
Yeah. Wow.
The Red Angel. The true Red Angel. This has been a real star-making turn for him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Sanguinius has always been an interesting Primarch. He's had more characterization than most of the Loyalist Primarchs, but this has made him like a linchpin. He's really significant to this story.
Yeah. I mean, at the start of the Siege, where he knows full well he can't die at this point.
Right, and he's using it as a weapon.
Yeah. Where he flies into the dogfight.
Yeah.
As the traitors invade. And
so he's using predeterminism as his shield.
Yeah. And he basically plays tag with Titans.
Yeah, it's utterly brilliant.
I mean, there's a certain madness to what he does.
Definitely.
But he's weaponizing what he knows is coming, and
it's interesting, isn't
foresight.
it? He's kind of like the antithesis of Night Haunter of Conrad Kurtz in this regard, because they both have the same gift technically.
But Kurtz can't see how to. He doesn't believe in changing things.
That's it. Kurtz is passive. That's the irony. Kurtz is passive. He surrenders to it.
That's a very good way of describing it. Surrenders, because anytime he has they do it a lot with Kurtz's material, where he has chances to change things.
Yep.
And he doesn't.
He won't. No.
Ever. He thinks that the future's predetermined, and it's
absolute predetermined. Whereas Sanguinius, he tries. Yeah, he tries.
He always tries to guide things to the better future.
Yeah.
So even if he sees something I think Kurz seems to always see the worst, but he can't see how to change that.
Or even how to use it. I mean, that's what Sanguinius does. He uses it to his advantage in the short term. Whereas Kurtz doesn't even do that. He just uses it as an excuse for nihilism.
Absolutely.
Well, if you're Conrad Kurtz, you would just go for nihilism.
To be fair, given his upbringing in the world that he was born to, I can kind of understand that. But actually no, because Sanguinius was born to an absolute hellhole.
Actually, that's true.
Very true,
Admittedly, Sanguinius had loving parents.
Yes, so there was that.
Yeah, and by all accounts, the Blood were a quite close-knit, relatively functional human tribe, as opposed to most of Baal's inhabitants.
Because it was a radioactive wasteland, wasn't it? When he was
Baal Primus and Baal Secundus were both inhabited, but just radioactive hellholes. Mad Max taken to the nth degree.
So interesting.
Yeah, but he was able to raise. Well, he didn't really raise. He unified his people, but they were still horribly mutated. But he could see beyond the scarred surface. You could see the soul underneath.
Yeah. And of course, Conrad also united his people initially, but through fear, absolute terror,
Yeah. And then they just figured, you know what, he's gone. Right, send all the crap guys after him as well.
There's a great section in, as an aside, there's a great section in the Ninth Ed Chaos Codex which describes a Night Lord from the 41st millennium who has decided to rekindle the old philosophy of Night Haunter, that it's all about justice. Unfortunately, because he's a Night Lord, he takes it way too far. And he starts enacting genocidal massacres because Imperial citizens are pronouncing Imperial Gothic wrong.
Oh, you see, that just reminds you of Chief Judge Fish, and that's that's right up there for me. So, Sir Sanguinius, he has a really interesting moment that I think is worth a discuss. The Emperor wants Sanguinius to stay because he got wounded gravely by Angron.
Yeah.
Sanguinius believes that because he's fated to die at Horus's hands, that if he stays, Horus will kill the Emperor and then come to kill Sanguinius. But if Sanguinius is killed by Horus first, it means the Emperor has a chance. Sanguinius, however, still wants to defy all these fates and kill Horus. So even
he's working for you, but there's a chance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening here. On this backdrop of the entirety of Terra becoming this warp, but the ruined storm made flesh, basically. Sanguinius is using that as a way to try and change fate, to jumpstart a different timeline for all intents and purposes. And this just creates a wonderful concept for Sanguinius of he is going to do everything he can to change it, but he's accepted that he probably can't. So we're talking about nihilism, but this is positive nihilism?
Well, which is a difference between nihilism and acceptance.
That's it, exactly.
And Sanguinius goes, he's at peace with himself. He knows, come what may, he might die, but he'll die on his own terms, doing the best he can. And he knows that there's a chance he might get that. He might be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He probably can't, but he might.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, in a lot of ways, that's what's been driving him throughout the entire course of the siege.
Yeah.
Knowing that if he can get to this one point, this pivot point, there's a chance he can change things for the better.
And it makes me wonder what the encounter is going to be like, because I have an intimation that it's going to be very different from what we know.
Absolutely.
I mean, a lot of what we've been told is that Horus tries to seduce him, which he's tried before in various ways. And that Sanguinius refutes him utterly. Which again is very in keeping with the character that we know. But there's not really been much about, well, does Sanguinius try to bring Horus back? Does he consider him completely lost? So I think we might see a lot more of them both trying to play each other to some extent.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, didn't we have a little intimation earlier on? I mean, Horus is having one of his flashbacks. Doesn't he say to who is it he's talking to? It's his remembrancer, isn't it? It's the
Melisandre.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, sorry, Melisandre. Melisandre it is.
Yeah, that's right. Mercedes Uleton, isn't it? That's who he's talking to. He says to her, "If it had been Sanguinius, I'd have been all right."
Yeah, because he was closest with Sanguinius than any of the other Primarchs anyway.
Yeah, and that seems to have been true of everyone. Almost all of the other Primarchs liked Sanguinius. Almost all of them,
Yeah, apart from Kurz.
Apart from, well, Kurt. To be fair, Kurtz didn't like anyone. So
yeah, that's true.
Although he did trust Fulgrim, because Fulgrim was his tutor. Unfortunately, Fulgrim then went and told Rogel Dawn on him, and it all went pear-shaped from there.
Yeah.
Brought him into the Brotherhood of the Primarchs, but then Kurtz told Fulgrim, which was a mistake, that he has these visions and that he's afraid that the Emperor is going to kill him one day. And Fulgrim confided, quote-unquote, in Rogel Dawn, which did not go down well.
Yeah.
No.
Fulgrim ended up. I mean, Conrad
Dawn half to death,
Kurtz.
didn't
He beat Dawn half to death. Yeah,
Mm.
he did.
Ah, brotherly love, eh?
Hmm.
Yes.
You get the impression Conrad Kurtz is not a lovable sort.
No.
Very difficult to like, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
It's
What we're going to do...
interesting to imagine what happened if he had, say, Sanguinius as his mentor instead.
Yeah.
Someone who could have guided him through his visions.
Or Magnus. Magnus knew
Yeah.
all about foresight, and his was much more expansive than either Sanguinius's or Conrad Kurtz's. So he could have tutored him. He could have said, look, no, it doesn't work like that, okay? It's not a set future. It's just one future of many fractal possibilities.
Mhm.
You can choose.
Yeah, you can choose, right?
What we're going to do is just to quickly start rounding things up, because we're nearly at we're past the 3 hour, I think, now.
We've done really well
Yeah.
there, I think.
Yeah.
So, right, is there any last things that you want to throw into the discussion?
Really, just that it's very clear from like a writer's perspective that this is Dan Abnett really, this is his magnum opus. This is something that he's put so much work into and so much effort, and he really feels the weight of this, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the weight of the Horus Heresy series. As we discussed earlier, this guy's been writing for Games Workshop for decades. It's his entire milieu. It's everything. It's his history.
Well, I mean, he very much kick-started the Black Library novel experiment.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's all of that weight made manifest in a story. So there's so
he's
much.
the last one from that initial crop of writers still around.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Although apparently Will King probably is considering making a couple of books at some point.
What, for Games Workshop?
Yeah, because the 20th anniversary of Space Wolves just came out.
Yes, it did.
So an updated version, taking into account all the new fluff and whatnot, would be very interesting, wouldn't
Absolutely. So I think
it? Very interesting.
the rumor mill is that they're trying to coax him back, which would be interesting.
I'd love to see Bill King take a swipe at the Immortal Realms.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that could work really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I suppose all the questions now are about part 2, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what gets me is there's not much to tell. Even though, like, in terms of what we know happens, we're already on the Vengeful Spirit.
Yeah.
So we're at the end. But apparently the second book is as big as this one.
Which is terrifying, because that's already the biggest book of the series so far.
Yeah, right. So what is going to happen? What is this all about? There's a lot to tie up there, and it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what he does. And is this going to change things? Is this going to actually change the face of what we know of 40k?
Yes.
I mean,
I hope so. I hope so. I sincerely hope so, for one.
I mean, I've got a couple of suspicions. One, that we'll probably spend a fair bit of time amongst Gilliman and the Lion's fleet.
That might be the case, yeah.
I don't... I mean, I suspect there's going to be a hell of an epilogue to this thing.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the duel, if we're done with it halfway through a book, I would not be surprised. And then the back half is moving things into position for the scouring.
I was going to say, could it even be like the beginnings of the scouring?
Yeah.
You know?
Because I'll be very surprised if GW haven't got plans to do stuff set around that. I mean,
oh god, if they're not, they have to do a set of scouring books, even if they're own. If it's it's not going to be as big as the Heresy, but that would make perfect sense.
Yeah, I mean, for Dark Angels, it's in their necessity, because so much of their background is tied up in the events of the scouring.
The Iron Warriors, like they're loads of their fluff.
Yeah, and like we already discussed, Imperial Fists and Cage and Gilliman's reformations of
it's actually a huge moment, isn't it?
There's a lot of stuff still
There's
to go.
Fabius Bile's stories, as he's driven back across the worlds and the planets into the Eye of Terror.
Yeah.
There's loads to do here.
So it's kind of interesting to.
Well, I think my guess would be that the battle between Horus and the Emperor is going to be big, because it's not just going to be a couple of pages of them punching each other. I think it's probably going to move
no.
into very metaphysical
Yeah.
I think that's
arenas.
the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be very abstract, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's going to be, if I was to make a guess at the concept that'll be their fight, it'll take place throughout the entirety of the Emperor's history.
Hmm.
So, it'll be Horus fighting the Emperor from birth, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Very abstract fight.
Yes,
Yeah.
across time and space.
yeah, throughout the history of the Emperor himself. And that's how you get some of these answers about the Emperor, and it's how you finally get the answer of, did he determine this was going to happen? Did he want all this to happen? And it just goes wrong somewhere.
Is he playing a longer game, right?
Because if this is meant to be the Emperor defeats Horus and ascends, which is the plan, and Dawn, in an unthinking moment, grabs the body and throws it into the Golden Throne to keep him alive. At the end of that story, Horus wins.
Yeah, or Lorgar wins more specifically.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that would just be such a horrible yet satisfying ending.
Yeah. It would be appropriately grimdark, wouldn't it?
Was it in the old story that Dawn came across the remains of Horus, the Emperor Sanguinius,
Mm-hmm.
and the Emperor spoke to him with the instructions for what to do to preserve him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much.
It'd be interesting if that's recontextualized as a misunderstanding on Dawn's part.
That'd be brilliant, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, there's got to be a reason that Dawn's in this corn world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's just because, he's going to turn around, fight back, and get spat out.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's there to corrupt him. It's there to undo him in a way.
Yeah, to skew him somehow.
And so if he comes out of that and he's just unable to think other than base responses, and he sees the Emperor in bits and just sticks him in a bin bag and then throws him onto the Golden Throne, that would just be a wonderfully horrific way of dealing with it.
Yeah. Of course, we're also going to have Abaddon discovering Horus.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, the beginning of Abaddon the Despoiler, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't really touch on him at all, which is...
No, I mean, he's a big part of...
but just what we got of him in End of the Death was the fact that we saw his personal charisma in full effect. Where I don't know, I fully expected all of the Sons of Horus to walk back onto the battlefield, away from him.
Yeah.
But to instead have one of those captains decapitate t'other one.
Yeah.
And then turn and say, "Right, with you, Chief."
It's the beginning, isn't it? It's the beginning. And also, I love the fact that he's really wary of the warp.
Absolutely.
He doesn't like it, does he?
And it's been a through line right through the heresy that Abaddon has no trust in warp magic at all. And
I like it. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it, like we were discussing earlier, George, with Andemsky Bowden's depiction of Abaddon.
Yeah.
It gels perfectly with this character who he's not shackled to chaos. He really has harnessed it in a way that Horus
did not, right? Yeah.
I'd argue Horus couldn't.
Yeah. Fascinating, right?
So to see the start of his journey to become the War Master we know today, that is...
If you're talking about the long game, I mean, that could be what the Chaos Powers are actually doing.
Yeah.
They're creating the circumstances whereby their ultimate champion can come about.
Yeah. Oh, man. Actually, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
Because Abaddon's way more successful in that regard than Horus ever was. He split the galaxy in two.
Yeah. Horus just... Well, I was going to say Horus just fucked everything up for 7 years. He didn't. There was more... He did a hell of a lot more than that. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Abaddon wins on that one.
Abaddon's way more successful than Horus ever was as a champion of chaos. Way more successful.
And Abaddon's arguably far more creative in what he does.
Yeah, because he's independent. It's because he's not actually a slave to the gods like Horus kind of is.
Well, Horus his fall was very much... going right back to when he was stabbed, that started everything. That there was no choice on Horus's part there.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, it's always been,
it
he's been operating
forced
from
on
a. That's right. He's been operating from a passive position almost constantly, whereas Abaddon knows exactly what he's going into.
Yep. At every step, Abaddon. He was characterized a bit more of a brute at the start of the Heresy books, but as things gone on, he's become much more nuanced and
as
more
might
rounded.
happen over like 10,000 years.
Absolutely.
Probably would happen.
But even within the Heresy books, the Abaddon we see it here.
Oh, he's a different character, isn't he? Because he's quite bellicose, isn't he? Early on, he's quite sort of like he's quick to violence and anger,
and very dismissive. Whereas
very
Abaddon,
dismissive.
Even in Saturnine, where we last saw him, he was very much more thoughtful and trying to come up with strategies to assist.
Yeah.
Well,
Perturabo, even though we got played by Perturabo to some extent,
he did.
He was trying to come up with ways that would speed up the defeat.
Yeah.
Of the defenders, and
absolutely, yeah.
But he was thinking strategically.
We're starting to see that he is willing to speak up against the Primarchs, which almost nobody is at this point.
I think one of the cool things about Abaddon is that he's trying desperately to win a fight when everything around him has gone completely and utterly out of left field.
Yeah, but he's still fighting a war, right? That's what he thinks he's doing, but he's coming to that slow realization that actually this is not a war. This is something other. This is an apocalypse.
That's such
it's something that a few of the traitor Marines not just traitor characters.
Yeah, come to that slow realization. Yeah,
the fact that this has gone off the rails.
Yeah,
what are we fighting over? Because there's not much left.
No, a lot of them come to that realization, don't they?
It's the humans piloting the Titans I feel the most sorry for.
That's from Echoes of Eternity. Yes.
Jesus
that's
Christ.
bad. That's bad.
Yeah.
That proper got me.
This is not a good situation, that one.
No. Yeah, how the engine's doing? I have no idea. The engineers just started becoming cannibals. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, shit.
Nice.
They fused with their machines, so, who knows at this point.
Man,
well, guys, I think we've done rather well there.
Yeah. So
I think that was very comprehensive indeed.
Absolutely.
And we're definitely going to have to come back and do the second one.
Yes,
obviously.
Yeah, absolutely we will. So the way that Battle Mallet is going to work, after you've heard this episode, I would like to hear your guys' feedback. I want to hear thoughts you've had on the stuff that we've discussed, and I will do a follow-up episode on this using the things that you guys talk about, the things that you guys have responded to us, and we shall do that probably in about a month's time or so.
That sounds great. That sounds like fun, actually.
And it's just a way
I enjoyed this. So,
yeah, it's been great fun.
Well, Big Swinging D, I'm going to be grabbing you for other things. So,
oh no,
again.
I like the void.
Slaneshi,
Leave me in the void.
Phrasing. So then, would everyone like to announce and share and talk about things that they would like to get people to go and see? We'll start with you, Big Swinging D, because it rhymes.
Yeah.
Well, sad to say I'm not terribly creative, but I'm a contributor to UKAnime.net as one of their resident mech heads. So feel free to pop on the website for my thoughts on various shows and mecha kits. And I'm also active here on the Fluffenhammer as one of Adam's resident Book and Hammer servitors.
You are, yes. You've just finished a report. Bloody hell, like it's a school. You've just finished a review of The Lion, Son of the Forest, which was...
Yes.
Yeah, that's a book. A book that has the best line in any 40k book ever. And that is, identify yourself, shithead.
Yep, which only gets better when you realise who he's saying that to.
Yeah. There is some freaking brass balls on that single governor that I want books about him. Just big ball Billy bastard, that's what I call him. George, where can people find you if they so wish?
People can find me over at the Exaggerated Elegy channel on YouTube, where there are loads of podcasts and discussions about media and fiction and all sorts of stuff, and some video game Let's Plays too. You can also find me on the channel Our Lives in Horror, where I talk to creatives from the independent and small press horror community. Writers, filmmakers, people who host websites, all sorts of stuff like that. You can find links to all of my published work, my short story collections, over at strangeplaygrounds.com. And they're all available on the Evil Empire of Amazon. If you type in George Daniel Lee, you'll find lots of my work, my short story collections. If you do buy them and read them, please leave a review. That would help me out a great deal. If you fancy chatting, you can come and chat to me over on Twitter at Enigmatic Elegy. And I think, oh no, there is something else coming up very soon. There is going to be a new Hellraiser DVD set from Arrow Films. And my colleague Kit Power and I are going to be on it. We are actually on it. On the DVD extras, we are going to be discussing Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2 and its impact upon our creative lives and whatnot in a little DVD extra filming. We're going to film that next Tuesday. Yeah, next Tuesday we're going to film that.
Oh man, that's fun.
So that's going to be great. When that comes out, go buy that.
Absolutely. Does it include the new Hellraiser? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know whether it includes the new one. I know that they're releasing it because that's come out, on the back of that. I know it includes 1, 2, and 3, and I think 4 as well. Actually, I think it also includes Bloodlines for its sins.
Well, at least you get 1 and 2.
Yeah, 1 and 2. Yeah, it's fine for me. I'm okay with that. And being able to be part of it is like a dream come true.
Absolutely, that's an incredible thing.
Absolute dream come true. That is.
Yeah, well done, man. That's well deserved.
It's only because of this stuff. It's because of the podcast. So weird. So weird.
And yet nobody wants me to come and sit on a Event Horizon 20th anniversary DVD.
Oh, if that ever happens, you better invite me. I can tell you.
Yeah, I'll sit there and I'll talk about Event Horizon for days.
Yeah, that's something we've got to do, actually. Maybe for a Fluffenhammer adjacent or something.
Well, that's what this Battle Mallet is all about. So I was actually going to say a little bit about this earlier on, and I totally forgot. So the idea of Battle Mallet is that I'm combining all the stuff that we were doing with the adjacents and the sanctioned and all of that stuff to make this show, which is where we pick a topic and we discuss it for however long.
Excellent.
The idea is then that once it's out into the open and people respond to it, talk about things that we talked about, they may agree, they may disagree, we might have missed something that you feel that we should have discussed. I can then do a follow-up episode and we talk about those things. And it makes each episode 2-part and very interactive. And that's the point. Fun. That's the point of the Battle Mallet. Also, I quite like the term Battle Mallet. It rolls off the tongue really nicely.
It's pretty good, isn't it? I do like it.
It's not a Warhammer, it's a Battle Mallet.
It's a Battle Mallet, yeah.
Exactly. So we can do things like Event Horizon on this. That's
excellent. That sounds great.
Yeah, we can pick anything that's adjacent and just run with it. Also, I'm going to be re-releasing a lot of the sanctioned stuff over on this as well for the next couple of weeks in order to get the numbers up. And people can send messages back on those ones.
See, I'm going to make a suggestion that once it's released later this year, we do a June Part 1 and Part 2 retrospective.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like that idea. That sounds great.
I'll be right up for doing that. That'd be good fun.
Too.
Yeah. Alongside this, of course, we are going to be getting back onto doing the Discworld discussions in the next couple of weeks, anyhow. So we can get they're going to get the Guards books. I really wanted to get the Guards books done by May the 25th. But I don't see that one happening somehow. 10 days? Nah, not a chance.
No, I've got to reread them for one thing. I haven't read them for yonks.
Yeah, that's going to be, I think, well, that's going to get sorted. So that's a Battle Mallet, and that is the end of this show. Thank you for listening, if indeed you still are.
Well done, guys. Well done. That was brilliant.